You think that you're okay, huh?
Well, I don't know that I'm okay any more than anybody else is okay, but I at least live a happy life and a very full one. I have a happy marriage, and my kids are all cheerful. And nobody's finding any fault with me, personally.
Do you ever think that you might be quite mad?
Oh, yes. The one man in the world who never believes he's mad is a madman.
You've probably heard of Scientology, whatever you have heard. If you haven't heard it from us, I can assure you, we are not what you expect. So take a look, and then decide for yourself.
Investigation has exposed a UK life coaching organisation that is accused of being a cult. The group says it offers self-development, but people who have left say it's taken over their lives.
Many people don't know me very well, think I'm a mystic, because I'm able to sort of feel things that no one else can.
It was an ordinary evening in a small town McDonald's until these people turned up, trying to recruit new members to their Christian cult. He shows me the videos the cult uses to teach that God has returned to Earth as a Chinese woman to wreak the apocalypse.
We've got a disturbing story to tell you about out of St. Louis. 6 people have been missing for months, and police now believe they've been lured into an online cult. A mother and her daughter, along with 4 other people, were last seen 6 months ago. Police in Missouri now say they're following the teachings of a former rapper and convicted child molester.
Police have released these photos, these surveillance images from a store shortly before their disappearance, but they did not specify exactly where this was located. But as far as the alleged cult leader goes, police say the individual is Rashad Jamal, and right now he's serving an 18-year prison sentence. He was convicted of child molestation.
I was pressing every drug on the planet as Marilyn Monroe. But besides that point...
You were saying?
Yes. I commanded all my atoms to come home back into light. In order for them to come home back into light, they had to be fucking whores. Battle me! My own light workers! Battle me! Serving love! And bringing in a new paradigm, you fucking dick whores!
They found the remains of 45-year-old Amy Stroud, dead for weeks. In these images, her body is wrapped in blankets and Christmas lights. We've blurred her face. It had turned blue from a silver treatment she was ingesting.
And, every day she would, be like, he's not coming, he's not going to make it, something's going to stop him from getting back to me, he's not Father, he's not, real, I'm not going to send, this whole mission is fake, I'm not God, I'm crazy, I made everything up, this isn't real, it's just all bullshit. And I was like, everything you say is real. Everything you're doing, I'm like, everybody's going to know what you did. And Father is going to come back.
Because When I'm in a film and I'm doing some sort of a performance, I can't form a rapport with my audience. But the stage actor who goes out on stage can touch each individual in the audience, and every performance is different because of that human-to-human contact. What the world needs, I believe, is more human-to-human contact.
A self-improvement guru convicted of turning followers into sex slaves has been sentenced.
Several women were groomed to have sex with him and even branded with his initials. One former member said in a statement today, "These are all terrible things, but it is the psychological and existential injuries which will continue for the rest of our lives that I find the most heinous."
It is our sincere hope that today's sentence does deliver some measure of justice.
And this is what the path of Ek is all about. Walking the path to God. Even more, it's about walking your path to God.
Two tales of terror and death to tell you tonight from two different parts of the world. In Guyana, a California congressman, 3 American journalists, and a woman were gunned down, murdered by a gang of fanatics. Congressman Leo Ryan had gone to the town of Georgetown in Guyana to investigate allegations that some young Californians were being held prisoners and virtual slaves by a mysterious cult called the People's Temple.
Man born into a prominent Connecticut family, his future filled with opportunity and wealth.
Are you filming this? No.
The tall man at the door with a blazing smile, once a Colorado businessman.
You look great.
So many people on this tape once high achievers, strivers filled with promise. Now performing a giddy talent show.
My name is Mufareh, and I'm your friend.
They call him Doe.
Marshall Herb Applewhite, Doe, is basically their god.
Who is this man called Doe? And what is the source of his power over highly accomplished people from all over the country?
Karma's a bitch.
Queen of Karma.
Hello, everyone, and how are you all doing today? I hope that all of you are having a fabulous, amazing day. It's been quite a while since I've been live. I apologize. I had to move this one a couple times due to real life events. But we are here finally today. And we're going to continue on our journey of trying to figure out what it is that cult leaders possess that make people follow them, why it is that people follow cults, what are cults, what's coercive control, how does it work, and the reason why I'm going into this. A lot of people have been asking me, why is it that you are so enamored with this? And other than the fact that I have been a part of 2 multi-level marketing companies, another thing that you maybe have never heard about before is that after I grew up a Roman Catholic and I worked at church camp in high school, and I was very, very much a Catholic, very, very Catholic, very Christian. Heading into my 20s, I decided that I didn't want to be about religion anymore, and I wanted to be a part of spirituality. So I went seeking online on Facebook for different spiritual groups that I was hoping to join. And I became a part of an online spiritual group that was also supposed to be therapy for people that were struggling in their real life with new motherhood, people that were struggling with addictions, people that were struggling with mental health. And it was supposed to be a support group for people to come, share their stories, seek support, maybe get some guidance, some resources, and etc. And eventually this group actually broke off into a splinter group where several of us that were at the top of this group, that were kind of like the leaders, the people that did most of the advice giving. And I used to write articles for this group. I have my social service worker. So of course I was revered as one of the people that was educated in social work and had an education. And similarly, there was somebody else there that had their degree in child psychology. And they were also one of the head people of this group. But we did have a main leader of this group, and it was a woman. And we got the group to be above 10,000 members in this Facebook group. And we kind of built like a team of mods, if you will, moderators for this group. And slowly, this started to turn into an online cult that resulted in members being a part of a flirty group in which they were told to send nude photos of themselves to the leaders of this group. And things started to happen that just made me feel ill. We had created another group in which the moderators decided that one of the mothers was not a good enough mother to her child and that maybe they should get CPS involved, and they started to attack this person. And that's when I said, I think it is time for me to leave. And I said, but I want to still do personal development, because that's what kind of brought me here, was we're going to be doing personal development and helping other people. And then I ended up in It Works. And that was kind of how I got led to MLMs. And I didn't quite realize that that online support group that I was a part of, that we had grown to over 10,000 people, that was then leading this weird splinter sex cult group, was actually a cult. Until about a year ago. When I really sat down and I started to go through all of the stuff that happened in the group. And it reminded me very much of a lot of the other spirituality sort of cults that you would hear about. And since I had been starting to cover them out here for a while, it sort of hit me. And over the last few years, I've been on a mission trying to figure out what it is that gets people that are intelligent, people that have an education, people that know about domestic violence, know of coercive control, and I don't want to say should know better, but I felt like I should have known better. And I carried a lot of guilt and a lot of issues around with me because of this, because I told myself that it was silly of me to fall for these things because I should have known better. And I think that over the last several years of me covering cults, one of the things that I've kind of had to face is the fact that cults oftentimes look for people that are educated, look for people that wouldn't normally fall for them. It's almost a challenge. And look for people to help legitimize their cult, like professionals, like doctors, social workers, psychologists, things like that, nutritionalists, if it's like an MLM health nut sort of cult, in order to trick people. And I think that one of the worst things that we do out here as a society is that we tell ourselves that we're too smart, we're too educated, we know about cults. we've all watched a documentary or two on like Scientology, or maybe you were around for the Manson family and you're like, there's no way I can fall for that. But as people are educating and learning about how to not fall for cults, we have to also remember that the cults are also getting better at how to manipulate, how to hide this manipulation, and how to make it sometimes so that only the people in the cults can see this manipulation, i.e. what we now know as coercive control. And coercive control is something that anyone can fall for. It's similar to people that see people in an abusive relationship and they say, I would just leave. And they can't understand why someone in an abusive relationship cannot just pack up a bag and walk out the door. It's very, very similar. And now in our time of technology, we are seeing these things happen on the internet a lot more. One of the most popular ones would be the Love Has Won cult that I've covered extensively over here on my channel. It was very much an online cult. It grew from live streams that were being done. There are some YouTube communities out here that I would argue are very, very culty, of people that live stream, and then the live streamer is revered as some kind of all-knowing, powerful being of wisdom that you should just take whatever they say as truth without doing your own personal research. And it's actually something that I bet you almost every single person has fallen for in some way, shape, or form. You have been coercively controlled somewhere in your life, and maybe without even realizing it. So because of that, I feel the need to educate the public, help spread awareness, and it's something that I think is very, very new. In doing research for a lot of my live streams, and even at the library yesterday, I was talking to the librarian and I was explaining to her that I do research into cults and I like to discuss cults and MLMs. And I said to her, it's very hard to find information. You would be surprised how hard it is to find like peer-reviewed studies and papers and stuff on this topic. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, we all know not to join cults and that. So why do you need to spread awareness about them? But it's because there is none. There is really not that much awareness spread about cults and coercive control and manipulation tactics and etc. It sounds like a topic that would be discussed and studied to hell, but it really isn't. And it's very hard to find information on it. So I've been going on a journey for the past several years trying to bring whatever information that I can find on it to you. And today I think we're going to go through several different things and just discuss how is it that cult leaders get this coercive control over members. I spent yesterday reading Scarred Again by Sarah Edmondson. It is the NXIVM cult story. She was one of the people that were branded by NXIVM, Keith Raniere, Allison Mack. I also have covered that extensively on my channel. And a lot of people don't realize, but every single multi-level marketing company out here, every single self-help group out here, every single coaching group out here is really just one step away from being NXIVM. And I know that might sound insane. And some of you might be saying, Queen, you're absolutely crazy. They cannot all turn into a sex cult. But they can. And that's the scary part. All of these groups start off as just a self-help group. Just a Facebook group that you can join to help give support to people. Or maybe a company you join that you make a commission off people's sales. Or maybe it's just a church. Nobody joins a cult saying, I want to join a cult. And in our world right now, hustle culture is really big. Being an entrepreneur is really big. And all of these themes kind of actually help push people into cults more. And I don't think that society realizes that their social acceptance of all of these groups is actually making our world very much culty and is bringing our world to a very, very scary, scary place. So let's just get into it. Enough blabbering from me. I found this very interesting article that outlines kind of what is coercive control and gives us 8 steps to mind control in terms of how cults suck ordinary people in. Violet says, Beth, interestingly, both my kids came away from high school having some knowledge on how to spot cults and cultish behavior. I think it was taught in life orientation. Do you know what? That's amazing. And they should definitely be teaching that in high school, especially in high school, because a lot of cults actually go to colleges and universities to recruit. Some of them even go to high schools, believe it or not. But university and colleges are often targeted. It's a perfect age when you're just trying to find yourself and you're seeking. See, and that's the thing is most people that join cults, a lot of people think they're missing something in their life. No, a lot of people aren't missing something in their life. They're just seeking more. Maybe they want more meaning to their life. They want more insight into why we're all here on this earth, and etc. So college age is the time when people are seeking, they're trying to figure out who they are, and it's really the perfect time for a cult to kind of swoop in there and go, we can teach you everything you need to know. Fans of the Wendy Williams show. I remember that show. Oh, Lord. So it starts off by saying, on the evening of the 18th of November, 1978, Jim Jones persuaded his followers to drink a punch laced with cyanide. You actually just watched a video that showcased all the followers. You know, the people that you just saw in that little intro, all singing and dancing. They seemed so happy. Well, that was Jonestown. And most of those people, unfortunately, it's called a mass unaliving of themselves. I prefer to call it a mass murder. Some people argue me on this point because they don't understand coercive control and how it works. Once you understand coercive control and how it works, or if you've ever been in a domestic violence situation, whether it's with a parent and, you were dealing with child abuse, whether it was with a spouse or even a roommate, because believe it or not, that can also happen, you would kind of understand a little bit more maybe than someone who hasn't experienced it. And I'm hoping to kind of talk to people that maybe don't have to experience it yet. Hopefully you can stop yourself from experiencing it. By morning, almost 1,000 members of the People's Temple had died, many of them children. Still one of the worst videos I've ever watched in my life. Do not watch that. The expression drinking the Kool-Aid is a grim reference to this tragedy. The control Jones held is far from unique among the leaders of destructive cults and new religions. New religions is a big one. We're back in the age of New Age spirituality. It comes and goes in phases. The last big jump on it was in the 80s, 90s. And we're kind of in another one right now where everybody wants to be a part of some kind of New Age spirituality. Charles Manson talked his followers into committing brutal murders. Members of Heaven's Gate made cheerful videos for their families before their mass suicide, believing they were to be taken to the next level on a spaceship that was hiding behind Hale-Bopp Comet. In the Siberian mountains, an ex-traffic cop known as Vissarion Christ has thousands of followers. They've abandoned comfortable lives to live self-sufficiently in harsh conditions, revering their teacher. There are many self-proclaimed Christs around the world. There's even one in Australia. Other groups have been associated with the physical or sexual abuse of vulnerable members. We have the Queen of Canada here. We may think we're too savvy for such manipulation. And that's the main thing that I hear is I've literally had people be like, "Quick, why do you waste your time talking about this stuff? Like, everybody knows not to join a scam. Everyone knows not to join a cult. You're probably in one. And that's why you're saying that. Because nobody's too smart or too savvy to be manipulated. But a recruiting group can be a fine-tuned operation. How does it work? That's a big subject. But as a potted guide, here are 8 steps to mind control. Because essentially that's what it is. It's mind control. Step 1, identify the potential recruit. And as we're going through this, think of on passive and how on passive works as well. You'd expect the focus to be on troubled youngsters, but many groups target people with useful skills or access to money. And I would say that Scientology is another really great example of this. They always want people of high status with lots of money, you know? Viserian's followers include soldiers, doctors, and engineers. We've all heard of celebrities involved in fringe religions. People are often recruited at a time of personal stress, such as divorce, bereavement, unemployment, or depression. And that's because that's when they're most vulnerable, right? Step 2, persuade the recruit to walk into the web. It may seem innocent, a self-help group, a retreat, relationship therapy, church, a business meeting, an evening class, a job interview. Just gonna add that one in there. Be surprised how many prey on people with job interviews. Interesting, groups use the internet. People are indoctrinated without leaving their bedrooms. There was this big fear when the internet first came out of how now bullies would be able to reach you in your home, abusers would be able to reach you in your home. And as the internet became more and more an everyday thing that everyone was using and socially acceptable, that fear has kind of left. And today we reach a point where people say things like, well, why don't you just turn off your computer and walk away? And it's like, that's great to say. But at the same time, we're living in a time where people can actually brainwash people over the internet. And you might see that when it comes to politics a lot. And believe it or not, the Trump group, they are the QAnon cult. It is a real cult now. It was a meme, but it's turned into a real thing now. And it's going on. I mean, the USA wants to literally vote in a cult leader that ran an MLM and that has raped young girls named Donald Trump. People out here are fighting for this man without taking a minute to really be like, okay, but what are his actual values? Sure, he's a great troll and he's not a politician, which is supposed to be evil, but take a moment and look at the values. Because oftentimes the people that say things like you can just turn off your computer and walk away are the same people that are going to vote for Trump. And I'm kind of like, sweetie, you falling for a cult right now. So it's actually more scary. Cults don't have to come and knock on your door like the Jehovah's Witnesses to reach you. You could be watching a bunch of YouTube videos and without even realizing it, all of a sudden on your playlist, propaganda pops up. And we are still in a time where not everyone actually recognizes propaganda. It's kind of interesting because all at the same time, like I said, they're all saying, oh, we already know about all this. We don't need to learn more about all this. Well, yeah, we need to relearn it now that we have the internet involved. Because all the research done on cults up until the 80s and 90s is all great for learning how they take control in that, but it doesn't incorporate the internet and how that can control somebody and how people use the internet to look like they should be revered or an influencer and someone that people can look up to when really they're quite evil. There's a rise of cult leaders taking government positions. There is, and there always kind of have been. I often joke that the Illuminati is actually Scientology because they have so many people in government positions and in high status positions as judges. Like, it's creepy. South Africa has a huge problem with these charismatic churches that pop up. I went to a funeral of a colleague who was in one. My mouth hung open. She was giving them her whole salary. Yeah, a lot of them involve some form of teething, and sometimes it'll start off with like 10% that you have to give. The Mormon church does that. If you're a Mormon, you have to give 10% of any dollar that you make directly to them. Every time you make $1, they get 10 cents of it. And then it often will grow, right? And it will be, oh, well, how much are you willing to give us? Are you willing to sign over your entire life to us? People have signed over their houses, not even just as collateral, as payment to the church, you know? She died of breast cancer that they told her they had cured her of. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Violet. Yeah, that's a problem. Definitely. Because none of them, there is no cure for cancer. And it's disgusting for you to take somebody that could go and seek actual treatment and get better, take them away from that treatment, and then lie to them. It's something way more gross about that. The next step is always love bombing. And this is one that you guys are definitely, I talk about love bombing all the time. You're probably sick of hearing about it. But it's a cascade of affection, support, and approval poured over the recruit. Every time you join a community, have you ever noticed that people embrace you like you're the coolest person ever? I do. Every time I join a community on here, I am the coolest person. And I am so intelligent and I am awesome. And everyone should come subscribe to me and watch my stuff. And then as soon as I do something that like one of the people don't like speak out about them being culty or tell them not to gay off someone, I am the worst person. I've always been stupid and I've always been ugly. And you should not support me and my channel at all. That's because they were just love bombing at the beginning. And then if you're not someone that's going to conform to their group as they want you to, which I definitely am not, as several of these groups out here on YouTube have been finding out, I do not conform to their cultish ways. Then you become the worst person in the entire world. And they will do a whole smear campaigns. They'll do 12-hour videos about you every single day for 6 months just to stop people from listening to you speaking out about them and how they like lolicon and weird stuff in their Discord. And it's crazy because the public sometimes falls for the smear campaigns. And they'll be the same people that were saying that they know better and that they know that these groups exist and they know about coercive control and about whistleblowers and how it all works and how they get attacked. Well, no, you don't. Because I've gone through it 6 times out here, and where were you? Supporting them. So don't tell me that you know it. So you always have to be very, very careful whenever you join a community and they're telling you how great you are. You know, just be very, very careful. Yeah, they'll say, don't go there.
Stop going there.
You know, just don't go there. That's what people leaving the flat earth cult go through. I believe it. Some of those people are crazy. It's probably the least dangerous out of all of the weird conspiracy theory cults that there are because it doesn't usually lead to violence or anything of the such. But there is a lot of like attacks on social media and a lot of smear campaigns that go on. And oftentimes, I know it may sound crazy, but that can also damage someone emotionally a lot worse than physical abuse would. And it can go on for years. Literally can go on for years with no stop. That's also the issue with the internet. It can also be anonymous, right? A woman born into David Berg's Children of God recalled this technique as a wave of peace and love. Berg's organization was also notorious for its use of flirty fishing, a form of I can never say this fucking word, evangelistic prostitution. And he actually tried to marry his granddaughter, Mary Berg. Poor Mary Berg. Honestly, that woman went through so much in her life. And when she was, I think she was either 11, 12, or 13, like right in her preteen years, David Berg, as her grandfather, put a ring on her finger and told her that she was his wife now. She did not want to marry her own grandfather, as most 13-year-old girls probably would not want to do. And when she fought back, they basically ruined her life. Mary died in 2017 at the age of 45 after tons of abuse from the church. They actually locked her away and gave her punishments for months for refusing to marry and have relations with David Berg, her own grandfather. This cult is still going on, the Children of God. We're going to be covering it extensively in another month or so. And it's actually very creepy. It is the child sex cult. That's what it's known as. And flirty fishing was a way that they taught children that it was okay to have sex with each other, use sex to recruit members, and that your ultimate goal should be basically wanting to be in Mary's position, get to marry David Berg at the age of 13 and consummate a marriage with him. There are people in this cult still today in 2024 who will tell you that Mary Berg is just a little whore. She was an awful person and that she was trying to bring down the church. That is what they are told about Mary. Because she didn't want to marry and have sex with her own grandfather. Mary is also the little blonde girl that you're going to end up seeing in a lot of their materials. If you've ever seen videos of the Children of God singing, she was usually in the front and center. She was like a little celebrity in the group because of how she was David Berg's granddaughter. She was a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. So she was exactly what he wanted. And everyone was told to basically be Mary. Be like Mary. If you were a little girl, you were supposed to be like her. So when she refused to go along with marrying David, it was a huge issue for the church. After spending years telling all the little girls to be exactly like her, she's going to marry her granddaddy. You all want to be like her. So they went into full-on PR mode. And still to this day, they're trying to say that flirty fishing is completely fine. And is there's nothing wrong with it. It's the outside world that's weird. We see love weird by thinking that children should not have sex. We're the weird ones. Because we're not pedophiles. We're weird. It's how it's put out. And it's just weird to think that it all started off with love bombing the same way. A lot of the women that join this thing, they're love bombed and told that they have to get closer to God. And how do you get closer to God? Well, you become one of the women that David Berg wants to marry. It sounds like the Amish. I mean, it's not that far. I mean, technically the Amish is also a cult. We can get into that too. But flirty fishing this is kind of an example. So we have this picture here of the man and woman. So we don't think that sex is a sin or that nudity is a sin or something wrong, because that's the way God made man and woman to begin with. He made the most beautiful, perfect man that ever lived. Then he made the most beautiful woman that ever lived. His crowning creation was a beautiful woman, God's gift of love to man. And then he told them to be fruitful and multiply. Genesis 1:28. That has been used by David Berg 5 million bazillion times. It's pretty much on all of their stuff. Every single pamphlet they have. Somewhere it says that you're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. That was kind of their whole motto. Women were only there to be sexual objects for men and then to have children. That's the only thing that they were for. And you were taught this growing up as a little girl. You know? Evangelicals have changed a lot just in my lifetime. The quiverful movement. Yep. Exactly. But the flirty fishing was basically, if you were a woman especially, I mean, men did it too, but I don't think it worked as much. But it did work. Like, they would send young men out too that were decent looking to go find women. And basically it was, you flirt and you have sex to get guys to join. Tell them that this is basically a sex cult and they'll get to come and have sex with you and all these beautiful women in order to join the cult. Isn't that what Shady Vance wants? Pretty much, yeah. Step 4 is sell, sell, sell. The recruit must see smiling, friendly, happy people, a living advertisement, toxic positivity to the max. Invite them to come along again and again until they're a part of the family. Tell them that they are family. The first telltale sign that you're in a cult, if you're sitting in a group of people and you're still not sure, even though there's an authoritarian leader and everyone's worshiping him and you're still kind of questioning it, are they telling you that you're family and you just met them? It's probably a cult. You know? It's just a good thing. If anyone ever tells you not to be around your friends and family because they're your family, they're your friends, run. Run as fast as you can in the opposite direction. Step 5 is tough love, and this is kind of where the conformity starts. Step 5 is tougher. The gloves start to come off. Reduce autonomy, induce dependency. Members may be deprived of sleep or food, given exhausting tasks, often tasks that takes them a long time to do. They're very repetitive, and it also doesn't get them anywhere. Like, you know what I mean? They're just kind of doing the same thing over and over and over and over again until they're exhausted mentally. Kept away from their usual support networks, rigid rules and rituals may be introduced. At the same time that they're breaking you down, they're also rewarding you. Rewards are offered, like rest, love, comfort, the carrot and the stick. Some groups use meditation, mind-numbing chanting, like singing, like Ekankar, euphoric music, or dancing at this stage. Again, if you're ever a part of a self-help group and they start telling you that you got to do chants or you got to do songs, maybe just kind of be like, I think I'll sit that one out. In 1995, the Shinrikyo doomsday cult carried out a deadly sarin gas attack in the Tokyo subway. An ex-member told the Japan Times that he took part in a grueling 10-day madness camp. While in the cult, he was eating 1 meal a day and sleeping only 2 hours each night. Sleep and food deprivation, coupled with rigid rules, help to break down a person's sense of self. And this also works online. Saying things like, go to webinars for 12 hours a day. You know, having webinars from 8 a.m. until 2 in the morning every single day for people to go to. Telling them that they have to write on passive in all capital letters. These are all ways that they're kind of tested. They're testing you. Mind control is sort of like magic. Anyone is in danger of falling into that trap. anyone. Ah made it seem like you were free to make choices, but in reality, you were being guided toward those choices. And this is something that's often used in interventions in social work. And I think that I thought that having my education as a social service worker and having worked in mental health, that I should be like above this somehow. I was like, I'm too good for falling for that stuff. I thought so too. That's the point of all of this whole channel. But in a weird way, being in social work and doing these interventions and being all about self-development actually made it so that I was more susceptible to join a cult. Because the way that they do this with people, where they say that, you know, you feel like you're making free choices, but you're being guided, is very similar to how a counselor would give you an intervention during a therapy, where they ask you questions and you kind of figure it out on your own, but really the counselor's guiding you to figure out this stuff about yourself. And it's kind of like a manipulation that we use in therapy to sort of help someone figure their own shit out. So we're not the ones planning the ideas. They're the ones going through. They're the ones figuring it out, having their aha moments. They're coming to their aha moments. Keith Raniere used aha moments in NXIVM as a thing. And so it gives you the illusion that you're making these decisions. You're coming up with all of these things, right? But really, like I said, the counselor is doing an intervention and purposefully kind of guiding you to come to these realizations, trying to help you empower yourself to have an aha moment. And it's similar, except in a cult, instead of them doing it to empower you into looking within yourself and actually finding answers and having real aha moments, they do it for you to have like fake ones. So instead of you really looking deep within and figuring things out for yourself like you would with a counselor, right? The cult is kind of implanting ideas into your brain, but then making you believe that you're not being indoctrinated. They're all just your thoughts. Right? And it's kind of crazy to think about. And I think that I saw this happening in several of the groups that I was in, but I told myself that it's very similar to counseling and doing interventions. So they're just doing that, but on me, just in a different sense. So it's all okay. It can't be mind control. That would be crazy. But it is. And so just be careful of that out there, my fellow social workers. The military uses those kind of tactics to break people down and make them tougher for war. Crazy. A lot of cults use those tactics. And yeah, they would be very much like the military. This is Charles Manson being escorted to court December 3rd, 1969. I'm sure I've used that photo before. Step 6 is renouncing loved ones. Persuade your recruit to renounce family, friends, anyone who offers a reality check, anyone who questions. Every time that I read like a memoir of someone who's left a cult, it always breaks my heart because all of them will say, my family was worried about me. They tried to tell me I was in a cult. My friends tried to tell me I was in a cult. But I was so indoctrinated. I listened to the cult when they said they were just being negative and toxic. And I cut off my friends and family. And now since leaving, I've had to dedicate a decade of my life to getting those friends and families back after all of this. And it breaks my heart. I just so want to be like, oh, if your friends and family tell you that maybe the group you're in is a cult, please listen. Please listen. I promise you, your friends and family want what's best for you far more than anyone that you just met. I promise you that. Even if they're shit, they probably still want better for you than these people, okay? So don't ever cut off contact. And I often tell people whenever they have a family member in a call, a friend in a call, even in an MLM, since people seem to think those are two different things still, I tell them the most important thing you can do is not let that contact be cut off. The cult is going to do everything they can to get this person to stop talking to you. Don't push them to leave. The cult will use that. You have to be very careful, but constantly tell them, I'm here for you. No matter what happens, I'm still here. Check in with them every couple days. Hey, how you doing? I just wanted to make sure you were okay. Because the one thing that often people say after they leave is that they had that one family member. And if it wasn't for that one family member, it would have been a lot harder to leave. Because they're going to need someplace to go. Eventually, they're going to wake up. Something will happen eventually that will wake them up. And it will be that person that they will reach out to. So you need to try to be the one person that doesn't give up on them, because the cult will give up on them. A lot of their friend and family might get annoyed with them and want to give up on them. They just need one person who doesn't. And if everyone had one person who just made sure to keep in contact, it would make it so much easier to get them out and leave. And when the time comes for them to leave, all of those people say, I had that one person. That one person who always said, this is a cult. Do not join it. I knew I could reach out to them and say, I think you were right. What do I do now? And that often is what starts people leaving. The more isolated the person, the more likely they are to invest in a new belief system. Which brings us to the 7th step, and this is probably the most important step, and core beliefs. Core beliefs are those things that, like your values, your morals, the things that really make you who you are. Those are your core beliefs. And the one thing that cults do is they change those. And once that happens, you're kind of stuck. Charles Manson was said to be giving his followers large doses of LSD. One described how each acid trip took her farther and farther away from reality, until she could believe anything at all. Some groups asked their members to wait for years before they learn the entire creed. And this is why it's so scary when someone says, I don't need to tell you anything to make this decision. You make this decision before you know the info. You should never have to do that. Never. Always be wary of people that say things like that. Because again, you should be able to know what the group is all about as soon as you join it. You know, one of the interviews that Sarah did, she said, you know, if Keith Raniere wanted to have sex with his members, he should have put that on his website. And I was like, damn, girl, damn. Because exactly. If there's secrecy, if it's not actually transparent, something weird might be going on behind the scenes you want to know about before you completely invest in it and change your core beliefs for it. And you have the right to that information before you decide to make such a commitment as these cults expect you to make. By then, they'll have invested heavily in the organization and will be immersed in its magical thinking. So oftentimes, by then, they've already replaced their core beliefs with that of the group. So when they find out that information, it doesn't hurt them so much. Look at Marty DeGarmo. Marty DeGarmo will come out here and he'll talk about how for 20 years he was in MLMs and they were not successful. But by gone it, he's joined this on passive one and it is. But that lets me know that there was a time when Marty woke up from MLMs. He realized nobody makes money for them. He's only in this one because he joined at the start of it. And that's because his core beliefs have been completely changed. He's had 20 years of indoctrination, even if it wasn't the same group. And that's what's so dangerous about MLMs, is that the whole culture is indoctrinating people and changing their core belief systems. That's what self-development is. My dream is to meet Marty DeGarmo one day. Right? Another level Thetan after, or 9th level Thetan after several years of costly seminars in Scientology. Were you, Jens? Lord. And they really do charge thousands of dollars per course. And the thing is Scientology and NXIVM were so much alike. Like the Scientology course that you have to work through is almost exactly like the NXIVM. Like he had to have based it on Scientology. And the ESP, like it's so bad. Jelly is going to visit New Jersey next year. Oh, you never joined a con. Someone else did. All right, good. I'm glad. I don't want anyone to ever have joined a cult. If I had it my way, not one person would ever have joined a cult. Step 8 is zero tolerance of criticism. The final step is vital. Shame anyone who questions. Shun any who leave. And this kind of seals the deal for that conformity, doesn't it? So first you're supposed to conform your whole core belief system to be the same as the cult. And then if you do question anything, you get shunned. You get told off. You get told not to ask questions. And eventually, as you guys have actually watched happen in real time with On Passive, people don't even ask anymore. Right? Ash can come out here tomorrow and say, do you know what? I decided I'm not going to get the OES ready by the end of September. It's going to be another 3 years. And these people would go, okay, Ash, that sounds wonderful. You know, because they're too scared to be like, well, you know, you did say end of September. Like, what has changed? Oh, well, you don't need to know that information. You know? Continuing control relies on absolute obedience and members being afraid to leave, afraid to question. All of them are living in constant fear of missing out, fear of questioning, fear of what happens if I leave tomorrow and then that's the day that it launches and everyone makes $1 million, right? I once spoke to the mother of a young man who had joined a destructive community in England. She described her joy when he phoned and asked her to come and get him, and her horror at his appearance. Thin and nervy, his head shaved, afraid to eat because it was against the rules. He disappeared during that first night, rushing back to the life that he'd fled. And that makes me so sad. And that just goes to show you, like, they have such a hold on you. And it's crazy to think about the hold that these people have. Just read about it in their recruiting techniques, like offering drug addicts a way to get sober and drug-free. In the South Park video about that. Oh, yeah, that one's good. I love South Park. Drugs are actually used, and the whole addicts thing. What's your password? There's like a... One sec. Yeah. So, basically, like, just think about the coercive control that someone would have to have on you to make it so that when you got away from this cult and went back to your mom, that you leave in the middle of the night to return to the cult that you just fled from. I mean, that's a crazy amount of control. Like, you're at the house with your mother. She's there. She can get you out. And this is what people don't really understand it. Right? Because they look at that and they go, well, that's that person's fault because then they went back. But it's that crazy hold on people that we want to dive more into. I'm going to make it my life's work to save Pam's clock. Hopefully I get a Nobel Peace Prize. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you do. So let's talk about the psychology a little bit more. Can I make this bigger? It's very small to me right now. It's even smaller. Oh, there we go. That's a bit big. Now I can see. Sorry. So let's talk about the psychology of cults. So the definition of a cult, of course, is a religious or quasi-religious group characterized by unusual or atypical beliefs, seclusion from the outside world, and an authoritarian structure. Cults tend to be highly cohesive, well-organized, secretive, and hostile to non-members. Most cults share some common traits, and these are kind of like the two things that you really do need in a cult is an authoritarian leader and basically a whole different belief system. Here it says they're usually led by a charismatic individual whom the members worship without question. And then it says cult members often live together in their own dedicated community. This is a little bit older of an article, I believe, 2021. And we've kind of broadened that definition over the last few years to include that cults are no longer just people that live together in a compound. And cults on the internet, they don't need a compound. They just need a safe place to go, an echo chamber, right? That is a parent's nightmare. It really is. Hey, Chris, good to see you. You almost joined Amway. Were you tricked into going to one of their job interviews? Amway is the one that loves doing those fake job interviews. I've had friends looking for work. They show up to an interview and then it's fucking Amway. And they're so upset because they're like, I really thought I got a fucking job interview, man. It's so cruel to do to people. So we really want to look into how they lure people in and take this control. Cults recruit new members anywhere you might expect to meet new people, social media, discussion groups, community clubs, events, and the like. These are typically non-threatening public situations that would not cause anyone to be suspicious. Cult recruiters get to know as much as they can about people and identify individuals who may be receptive to meeting a group of the recruiter's friends at dinner or another social event. Though the chosen targets are generally unaware, these seemingly innocent gestures are the first steps to being drawn into a cult. Targeting vulnerable prey. Receptive people are those who are looking to escape something, such as an unhappy life situation, and to belong, be accepted, and find meaning. And I want to say that is something that everyone is looking for. Oftentimes, the way that articles like this and a lot of the research portrays people that end up in a cult as like these vulnerable people that are missing something from their lives, like I said earlier. But oftentimes, maybe they're not missing something. They just want more. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're missing out on something. They're just looking for more answers. A lot of people like to look into why is humankind here on this earth? And for a lot of people that end up in especially new spirituality cults, that's kind of what started it for them. They may be completely happy in their life, and now they want to go and seek out the answers of life. So they turn to spirituality or religion in order to do so. And then in comes the cult. You know what I mean? So you got to be careful. And I don't want to say like, don't join any social group. So the best way I think that you can sort of combat joining a cult is by educating yourself on coercive control, on these red flags, how to spot them, how to spot narcissistic behavior early in people, and things like that so that you can protect yourself. Because I don't want to be the type of person that says, oh, just don't join clubs and groups and don't do any personal development training. Because not all of it is a cult. Just, it definitely opens the door to cults. So cults prey upon the vulnerable among us, such as teenage runaways, drug addicts, abuse survivors, those who have lost someone close to them through death or a breakup, those suffering from insecurity or mental health issues, or anyone who feels disconnected from society. And over the last several years, we've had a huge rise in cults. Unfortunately, the pandemic brought a whole bunch of them to us because of how everyone felt disconnected from society during that time. And this is what I mean. So it's not always like something that you're missing. You're not this like vulnerable person. You could literally just be in a situation like the whole world is in a pandemic. Everyone's feeling disconnected from society. So you want to go feel more connected. Completely normal. Doesn't mean you're lacking or vulnerable or anything. But then you end up in a cult. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like how they try to paint it out as people that are vulnerable are the people that fall for cults. My whole point is, can be anyone. You can have everything going perfectly fine in your life and somehow end up in a friggin' cult, you know? Drawing in recruits. Once the potential recruit is in the presence of cult members, typically still oblivious to the group's agenda, they are showered with love and validation. This tactic, referred to as love bombing, makes the recruit believe they've found what they're looking for and more likely to return for group activities in the future. Constant theme in these is when you hear people talk about how they first joined, they'll talk about how they showed up to a group of people and for the first time ever, they felt accepted, loved, they felt appreciated, and it's all just love bombing. All of it. This is critical in the early stages of cult indoctrination since the recruit is not yet under their influence and needs to feel secure. Taking control. As they indoctrinate new members, many cults separate them from their families, friends, and jobs, slowly remaking their identities to suit the group. They may force recruits to surrender their money, belongings, and bodies to the cult's leader and other members. Like I said earlier, people have signed over their houses to cults. You know? For all Euro, Epic Games has Football Manager 2024 free if you get it before Thursday. If you're in Europe. Go, go, go! Go, go! I'm not really familiar with Burning Man, Takara, so I can't really answer that. As they indoctrinate new members, many cults separate them from their families, friends, and jobs, slowly remaking their identities to suit the group. They may force recruits to surrender their money, belongings, and bodies to the cult's leader and other members. Sometimes they compel new members to marry people they just met. They may use punishment, deprivation, and other tactics to wear them down. These efforts, which sometimes include threats, make new members dependent on and afraid to leave the group. Fully indoctrinated members often engage in behavior they never would have considered in their former lives. Some examples are the Manson family. Charles Manson directed his family of runaways and other troubled individuals to start a race war by murdering several people in Los Angeles. There were 8 victims in all, including pregnant Hollywood actress Sharon Tate, but the group claimed to have murdered and disposed of the bodies of many more. There are several people that went out to the ranch and went missing. They have not found all of the bodies, but they did find several bones at the ranch that ended up leading to some missing people, so they believe that the group probably also murdered several people at the ranch. It's just it's actually never fully been solved, to tell you the truth. The Salivians, perhaps less known than some other cults, yet one that operated virtually in the open in Manhattan's upscale Upper West Side. This group began as a psychoanalytical institute in the 1950s, very much like Scientology, NXIVM. Actually, very much like NXIVM. It evolved into a coercive sex cult that lasted for decades and counted famous artists among its membership, like NXIVM. The People's Temple is actually Jonestown. Reverend Jim Jones ran the People's Temple in several California locations before moving the congregation to Guyana and establishing the Jonestown Commune. The temple's methods came under increasing scrutiny, and upon an unwelcoming visit from a U.S. congressman, Jones ordered his congregation to drink Flavor Aid, which is often misattributed to Kool-Aid. Yeah, it was actually not even Kool-Aid. It was no-name brand Kool-Aid called Flavor Aid, laced with Valium and cyanide. Can never say that one either. Many victims were children, and many adults were forced at gunpoint. More than 900 people died that day. And I watched the whole, I think it's 2 or 3 hours long of the recording. It was the audio recording of it, along with some visuals. Do not do that to yourself. Do not do that to yourself. I tell people all the time, it really fucked me up. I had nightmares about it for weeks. They actually had parents force feed their children the cyanide, and then parents would watch their children die and then realize what was going on and then be like, oh my God, I need to save my kid and I need to get out of here. And then they were actually held down and poisoned themselves. And this is why, to me, it wasn't a mass unaliving, suicide, wherever. Fuck off, YouTube. Censor me. But it was more of a murder because there was actually several people that changed their minds during it. They had guards standing at the doors of the room. It was done in this like little hut thing. And they basically had guards standing all around the outside, not letting people out. So, you know, to me, it was more of a murder. Because if you change your mind, you don't want to commit suicide anymore, and then you're forced to still die, that's no longer a suicide. And it was a lot of that. You could hear it on the fucking recording too. And it's the worst thing that I've ever heard in my life. It's okay to cheap out on the last drink. It's not like anyone will complain about it 5 hours later. There were a couple of survivors. Yeah, then the guards were supposed to drink too. Many of them did not. That's right. There was actually an interview that I watched with 2 fathers. And unfortunately, their wives fed their children the Kool-Aid. And then once their children started to pass away, the wives were like, well, what's left for me? And they drank the Kool-Aid. And then the husbands lived and fought and got out of there. Because there was a few people that were able to finally escape. And they were 2 of those people. And they basically had to escape after they had just watched their family die in front of them. And I just, for the life of me, I can't even fathom what that would be like at all. Like, I swear to God, those people have gone through something that like nobody should ever have to go through. It's just like one of the most horrendous things that's ever happened in our world, Jonestown. And the problem is that, like they say, many were forced even at gunpoint. So, like, was it their own free will? I don't think so. That's all I'm saying. Have you read Seductive Poison? That's on my list. I'm about to read it. I have a whole list of books that I'm reading. My husband was laughing at me because I read Scarred Again in like one day yesterday. He was like, I haven't seen you read a book in a few weeks. This is crazy. I remember questioning a friend who was investigating some sort of oil drops from what seemed like an MLM, and we aren't talking anymore. Aw. Darn. It's so sad because it's like, you know, they tell you this thing that they're taking, and then you say, you know, that doesn't sound healthy for you. That sounds like maybe something that you, like, don't eat the oil. That used to be my old tagline. Don't eat the damn oils. Stop drinking the oils, damn it. It's not good for you. doTERRA, Young Living, they always tell people to drink them. I'm like, don't do that. So then you question it, right? Well, then what happens is they go back up to their upline and they say, hey, scary old internet lady, which is telling me that I shouldn't be drinking these oil drops because they could be dangerous. Should I be worried? Upline? And the upline goes, oh, no. Scary old internet lady is obviously just a negative, toxic person. You should cut off contact with them. They just want you to fail and not be healthy anymore. And this is what I mean. That's so dangerous. Because then what does the person do? Cuts off you. And you were the one that was actually caring about them, not the MLM, you know? Makes me so upset. I hate that. I hate it. I always tell people, listen to your friends and family. They know you far more than any of these people ever will. Heaven's Gate, Marshall Applewhite. Friggin', he was another one where, like, when I see Marshall Applewhite talk, it's very much like Keith Raniere or Ash Mufareh. Like, I'm just kind of like, what did people see in this dude? He's creepy looking, and I don't think he has much to offer, but okay. But he was convinced that an extraterrestrial spacecraft was hiding behind the recently discovered Hale-Bopp comet, and that members of his group would be taken to a higher level of existence by that spacecraft following their deaths. As the comet passed close to Earth, 39 members of Heaven's Gate drank vodka mixed with phenobarbital, placed plastic bags over their heads, and died. Now, some of them were together. Out of the 39 members, I don't remember exactly how many groups, but I believe there was 4 or 5 different groups. And then a couple had drank it alone at home by themselves, but they weren't all in one compound. There were several people in their compound that all did this together in bunk beds, and they all wore the Nikes and had the outfit and blah, blah, blah. But then there was even some people that weren't at the compound, that were at their own homes, and they did this mass suicide with the compound. And it just goes to show you, like, you don't have to be at the compound. It's scary, you know, because you think of a cult at a compound like Jonestown or Heaven's Gate, and it's like, yeah, that's what a cult is. But no, he had control over people that were at their homes. And that's the part that you really got to look into and go, well, wait, what kind of manipulation is that? Where to most of us, you wouldn't be in a threat if you're in your own home. Like, if I'm on the computer here in my own home, I'm not threatened. My husband, my daughter aren't going to hurt me. You know what I mean? So if somebody on a computer tells me, hey, Queen, take this fucking vodka-laced stuff, you know, like, I can be like, no, fuck you, and turn off my computer. And then my husband will be like, oh, thank God you didn't do that. But maybe if my husband was also in this cult and he was also going to drink the vodka, I might not then have an out. So it's scary to think that the cults can come right into your home and control your entire home. You know, that these people, it's not like Applewhite was there. He couldn't come in and do anything to them. So a lot of people don't understand because they're like, well, why would those people do that at home? Like, that's dumb. You know? And it's like, that's the control part that we're all trying to figure out here. All of us. Psychology's trying to figure it out. Sociology's trying to figure it out. All of the people that speak out about cults and have ever been in a cult, we're all trying to figure out, what is that thing? What is it? How does it get that kind of control over us, you know? Marshall Applewhite was a professor at the University of Alabama, not Alabama's proudest moment. Yeah, I think he was. Downside to the global village, yeah. It's crazy to think that, you know, these things can have control of somebody even when they're sitting in their own home. Nexium. outwardly a self-help organization, and shout out to all of my real OGs who were here with me, because we had a celebration stream when Keith Raniere was sentenced to 120 years. It was secretly a sex cult assaulting women, branding the initials of founder Keith Raniere and Allison Mack on them and blackmailing them. The organization operated partly on a pyramid scheme structure, with masters recruiting slaves, who would eventually recruit more slaves as subordinates. The case also drew attention for the involvement of Smallville actress Allison Mack, who recruited women for Raniere. And she was his number one girl after his wife disappeared. Good news. Hundreds of members of the Kenya-based Good News International Church willingly starved to death at the direction of their leader. Paul, I'm not going to get that right, Mackenzie, who himself abstained from the slow suicide. Oh, yeah? Don't they always? Mackenzie claimed to have determined the date on which the world would end, and purportedly wanted his followers to go to heaven in advance of the apocalypse. But I guess he just didn't need to go to heaven right then, right? Like they all had to do the suicide, but he was gonna hang out on Earth, I guess, while the Earth exploded. Come on, man. Of course, right? Of course. It's kind of funny to think. So I think it would be a good time to take a little bit of a break now. And then I want us to read through some Stephen Hazan, and I have an interesting sort of summary of a study that I wanted to go through called How Do They Control an Insight into Cult Manipulation? So we can go through that, Hey, gang! I wouldn't consider Burning Man a cult. I think it's way weirder. It looks like some kind of modern I'm going to have to look into this. I have friends who go to the African version, Africa Burn, but it's not my vibe. Well, that's kind of cool. Why are so many people committing crimes for Trump? He's been scaring them for 9 years now. They defend their country from whatever threat he told them was coming for them, right? That's the thing, is that it's the fear. Fear can control people like nothing else. You can instill some fear. Like it's been used in politics over and over and over and over again. That's all you really have to do, though, is instill fear. Instill fear, have a little bit of us versus them mentality. The people who want to make America great again versus those who don't want to make America great again, apparently, because apparently half the world doesn't want to make the world great. And people do anything for their country. Patriotism, especially in the USA, is a very big part of being American. We don't have it so much here in Canada. We sing the national anthem before games and at school, the kids sing it every day and stuff. But then that's kind of as far as our patriotism goes. We don't really do it. In the US, it seems to be a very big part of people's identities to be patriotic and to be all about, fighting for the rights of the US and all that. And so I think more so there, it just tends to work. You can really manipulate mass groups of people from the US, telling them to defend their country, fight for the rights of their country, the rights of their people. And almost the whole country will get in on it, We had some extreme patriotism here in Germany, but it didn't turn out well. Yeah, at the hockey games. We do the national anthem, and we cheer for our Canadian teams and stuff. But I just feel like Canada doesn't have the same amount as the US does. We're not all about our army as much either. We love our veterans, but we're not all. I feel like the US is more into that. They're more of a war country. So maybe that's where it comes from in comparison. That might be part of it. We don't really go to war. I guess when you're a country that constantly goes to war with other countries to stand up for rights, you know, being a patriot is a big thing. But we're kind of the peacemakers over here in Canada. We like show up to like make sure that people aren't fucking things up during the war. And we provide aid to the people that need help and things like that. So maybe we're just not as patriotic. I don't really know. Hello, good to see you. But yeah, when we come back, we're going to be going through some Psychiatric Times articles, which is basically Stephen Hassan, I believe he wrote. Yeah, Stephen Hassan wrote these. Responding to authoritarian cults and extreme exploitations, a new framework to evaluate undue influence. It came out last year, but I haven't gone through it yet on this channel, so I would like to do that. And then we are going to be going through this. We're not going to read through the whole paper. I have read through the whole paper, and then I read through the summary, and I was like, you know what? This sums it up pretty well. I'm pretty sure we can just go through that along with everything else I've gone through here today, and then you'll have a more of an understanding. Patriotism in the U.S. is akin to white nationalism, depending on who you ask. I am African American, and anytime I run into a patriot, it tends to be the racist types. I think that's a fair assumption as somebody that's African American, for sure. And I bet you that that probably does happen. See, I can't really speak to that because I'm not African American, but I can 100%. I don't think you're lying. That's for sure. That's for sure. I just don't have the same experience in life as you do, Takara, so I can't really, I don't want to like speak for that or anything. But yeah, no, I could completely see how that would be. That would be the case. Especially under Trump. There, I said it. I said it. All right, I said it. Anyway, we'll be right back.
Today's video is brought to you by...
Do you have a berserker demon? You may think that's a strange question, but I've dealt with berserker demons. What's a berserker? The word describes ancient Nordic warriors who fought with uncontrollable rage. This is where we get the expression, he was so angry, he went berserk. In the days of Vikings, berserkers would enter a trance before battle to get supernatural strength. They fought with a frenzy. Sound like someone you know? As we say, they lose it. Explosive anger can come from frustration, feeling disrespected, trauma, mental and hormonal issues, and drugs, but uncontrollable rage can be demonic. As an exorcist, I've dealt with berserker demons. If you've got one, you'll need more than anger management therapy. You may need an exorcism of a berserker demon of anger. That's inhuman. I'm here to help at boblarson.org.
Whoa, looks like you got a bit of a tangle in your dangle. Did you know that more than 8 out of 10 hose owners die each year? Not anymore. Hey, turn me on and watch my hose get huge. My mom always told me I was a grower, not a shower, and boy was she right. And if you squeeze me in the right spot, all my raging fluids will come flying out of me, and instantly I'll retract to my small, natural, convenient size. Amazing! Oh, yep. Shout outs to all my flowers and growers out there. And just like a real snake, it can contract and expand like an accordion. You know, we really wanted to name it the Snake Hose, but that's the title of a gay porno. I mean, I've never seen it, but lizard's close enough. This is my next door neighbor, Sharon. She didn't know I was filming her. She also didn't know I had my hose in my hand, too. If your hose weighs more than 15 pounds, I feel sorry for you. You see, women prefer light, dainty, petite hoses. You don't want to be walking around with a big honking nanner. Oh, Sharon. Whoa, watch the whoa, don't get it caught on the thing. Whoa. Hey, buddy, watch where you're going. You don't want to end up like that guy, still using a standard hose, not going anywhere, and he's fucking bald. Fuck! Look at my hose, people. Oh, yeah, it's growing fast, and it's not kinking up anytime soon. Now, I don't know who lives here, but it's time to wake up. Behold, the full length and girth of my hose and its full potential. Hey, can't you see I'm filming a commercial here, you fucking asshole? Wah! Take that, fuckboy! No one fucks with my hose! The lizard hose is about $30. You get 25 feet. That's like, just a little bit more than $1 per foot. Now, fuck it, we'll give you 2. That's 50 feet. Get fucked. Come on, touch it.
Wait, do you have a condom? You don't have one somewhere? Yes. Oi, excuse me there, sir. Do you have these directions? Sure, you just go down that way and make a turn. Don't let her know that your dinger's almost a no-go. Get Tiny Dinger condoms to you discreetly. It's very important to choose the right size, so make sure that you get your tiny size. Don't be caught without a condom. No, no, no. Get Tiny Dinger condoms, a YouTube streamer's favorite brand. Located at your local CVS pharmacy, Rexall, Shoppers Drug Mart, Walmart, and in your favorite streamer's nightstand.
We get it. You're into feet, and not many girls are also into feet, but you finally found your dream woman. We got your souls covered now. Brought to you by the same people who brought to you Tiny Dinger condoms, trademarked, a YouTube streamer's favorite brand, and the same people who brought to you sexual endorphin spray, trademarked. We have now created the foot fetish Fantasia spray. When you're rubbing on her toes, take a deep breath in and smell the sweet aromas of the toilet bowl, the tire shop, dead flowers, and your nana's perfume. After all, it will turn you on more than just her pinky toe will. This little piggy has been to the market and grabbed themselves a bottle of the foot fetish Fantasia spray, trademarked. It made it so much easier to wake to my ex-girlfriend's feet after she posted up her beach trip vacay photos. Grab your bottle now and make that nasty foot fragrance vanish just like a ghost. Located at CVS Pharmacy, Shoppers Drug Mart, Rexall, Walmart, Kmart, Chaz R Us, and in your favorite foot fetishist nightstand.
Are you getting upset with people's freedom of speech and consumer protection laws that allow the public to speak out about your scam? Are you giving YouTube creators false strikes in order to continue preying on vulnerable people? Is it getting hard to hold it in? Hold in all the bullshit? Well, introducing Tiny Digger Diapers, the adult diaper designed for the man baby deep down inside who's always on the way to the top where his ears will pop. With our FlexiFit technology, Tiny Digger Diapers moves with you whenever you sit on your chair, sit in your RV, sit on a boat, or sit in your home office paid for by the people you scam. The Secure Lock Core offers unmatched absorption for when you're full of shit, which is most likely all the time. These diapers keep you dry and comfortable so you can attend all 500 hours of webinars this week and not miss your chance to sign up a homeless man to your scam. Maybe he also needs the diapers, huh? Brought to you by the same people who brought to you Tiny Digger condoms and Fantasia foot spray. Buy Tiny Digger diapers today. Located at Shoppers Drug Mart, Rexall, Walmart, Target, your local CVS pharmacy, and in your favorite con artist nightstand. No matter where your day takes you from webinar to webinar, you will always be dry and you won't have to cry. Thank you for listening to a message from today's sponsor. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Takara says, also, I think U.S. patriotism is mixed too much with religion. I think that's another thing here with Canada. Like, Canada was kind of built with religion, but we're not as religious as I would say the U.S. is. So you have white nationalism plus religion is a KKK mentality. It is. So many people say the U.S. was founded on the Bible and Christianity, and a lot of people are arguing that they want the church to be back in the state. And then you have a lot of people that don't think that that should be a thing. And that's, I think, a lot of the issue going on in the US right now, is it is kind of a religious war. It is, unfortunately. They're definitely more Christian than I would say Canada is as a country. And Canada's also stolen. I mean, Canada also stole their land from the natives. So there's that. So this is an article that was written by Stephen Hassan. There's 3 parts to it. We're going to go through all 3 of them. And it's about authoritarian cults and extreme exploitations, a new framework to evaluate undue influence. We're going to be talking about the bite model and all kinds of fun stuff here. So it says, to properly address the wrongs done to victims of destructive cults and other extreme exploitation situations, the justice system needs to understand and incorporate research on human development and undue influence. We need to do more in terms of undue influence, coercive control, etc. Current law assumes incorrectly that human beings make rational choices once they reach the age of majority, despite the fact that neuroscientific research shows that the brain continues to mature until age 25. In Thinking Fast and Slow, Kahneman demonstrated that most human beings depend on unconscious heuristics to make fast decisions and use slow conscious data analysis only when necessary. Former Pennsylvania Supreme Court Justice Michael Musmano once wisely observed that more people feel their way through life than think their way through life. In this series of 3 articles, we present a new framework for evaluating undue influence. This installment will summarize some of the main issues with undue influence in the legal system, as well as the main thought reform or brainwashing models. The social influence model is a much-needed framework for experts to be able to do a competent job presenting a forensic analysis of undue influence in courts. The BITE, behavior, information, thought, and emotional control model of authoritarian control, which has been qualitatively validated for over 30 years, is the subject of this research study, which will be presented in the second installment of this series. Until now, neither of these existing thought reform models have been evaluated quantitatively. The third installment will evaluate the results of the research study and explain how this new framework will help the legal system provide a better tool to evaluate individuals under undue influence to provide them with the justice they deserve. This doesn't only work with cults, it also works with people in DV situations and with human trafficking victims, where defining undue influence is important. Testamentary capacity. Thomas Guthil, MD, evaluated a young man involved with the Sun Mayan Moon organization to determine if his decision to give money to that group was a competent one. This article's primary author, Stephen Hassan, actually also belonged to the Moonies. That's what that is called. It's the Moonies. From 1974 to 1976. Using a standardized method of conducting a cognitive assessment, the examiner administered a mental status exam. The participant gave a fluent, reasoned presentation about his decision, and Guthil reported that the man handled the cognitive factors in the mental state examination. However, administration of the Proverbs test for abstract thinking proved difficult and disorganizing. Using existing guidelines and aside from the man's difficulty with abstract reasoning, Guthil did not find sufficient evidence that the young man was unfit. Although the decision was regarded as unwise by the examiner, it could not be demonstrated to be incompetent. Multi-level marketing. MLM. Consumer protection agencies have labeled pyramid schemes that defraud the public with false claims of becoming rich as illegal. And I am a part of one of these consumer protection agencies here in Ottawa, if you wanted to know. These plans could be described as Ponzi schemes with people instead of money. Recognizing its inherent dangers, Noah Joshua Phillips, who served on the Federal Trade Commission, noted that even MLM experts shared the need to better define undue influence for the international problem of MLM. Specifically, although existing laws penalize the company and in some cases attempt to levy fines, no attention is given to the psychological harm done to those ensnared. Harm on such individuals can include loss of marriage, loss of relationships with family and friend, and loss of real career opportunities. Further research needs to be done to determine the public health harms, which include alcohol and substance addiction, depression, panic disorders, sleep disorders, and then even suicide. So, I mean, that's not really a great thing, is it? Hold on, guys. I have somebody knocking at the door. Just give me a second here. All right, we're all good. Sorry. I am very glad that MLMs are brought up in this, though. So where were we? Harm on such individuals can include loss of marriage, loss of relationships with friends and family, loss of real career opportunities. Further research needs to be done to determine the public health harms, which include alcohol and substance addiction, depression, panic disorders, sleep disorders, and even unaliving, which again, that's not something that's talked about. And not a lot of people really understand that there is psychological damage to people that happens in MLMs. When I first came out here, I was going through a really awful time after leaving MLMs, and I was not like embraced with open arms. Like, oh, I'm so glad that you're out here speaking out, and please do tell us about the awful times you're going through. No, I was judged. I was told that I was crazy. You know, like, you're going through some things, you need some help, blah, 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 by people that are out here in our anti-MLM community claiming that they want to be the influencers of that community to help people heal from cults. It horrifies me to think about it. You know, no, it wasn't a Jehovah's Witness at the door. Of course, we're waiting all day for them to come and check out for some maintenance. And of course, they couldn't have come at all until I was live streaming and then my husband was gone to pick up Hannah. Like, why would they come before that, you know? So radicalization of adults, online or in vivo recruitment. More than 500 people were arrested after the attack on the Capitol in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. Many people have pled guilty and have expressed regret, saying they were deceived. Some people report following Donald Trump's instructions as president. Others have been involved with QAnon and other online groups. Some groups, like the Proud Boys, hold in vivo meetings and have encouraged violence. They believe the present government is illegitimate. Islamic extremist groups recruit and indoctrinate individuals to enact violence and terrorism. And defectors of ISIS are put in camps by officials with no way to systemically discern whether the individuals are no longer dangerous or if they can be returned to their country of origin. The model described in this article might serve as a foundation to develop humane policies that encourage justice. This paper provides an explanation of some models that have helped shape a framework to evaluate undue influence. One of the three models provides statistical analysis and potential solutions on how to evaluate or assess undue influence in the legal system. Each model is detailed as follows. The influence continuum of due influence, ethical, to undue influence, unethical. And we've gone through that together. In order to have a framework that can protect an individual from undue influence, one needs to utilize an influence continuum that is broad and easy to understand. On the ethical side of the continuum, informed consent is a vital practice. People need accurate information about the recruiter, the ideology, and what happens to them if they say yes to the proffered decision. Ethical, healthy influence recognizes that each person is unique. This framework assumes that individuals should enjoy free will, critical thinking, conscious, creativity, humor, and love, as spelled out in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The themes described in the continuum are fleshed out by evaluation using the BITE model, which is detailed later in this article. Using these models, a motivated individual with modest research skills and digital access can verify claims about credentials and the methods and practices of organizations. Let's just take a quick look. So here it is here. And for individuals, just as an example, a healthy would be authentic self, unconditional love, compassion, conscious, creative and humor, free will, and critical thinking. Unhealthy is a false cult identity, conditional love, hate, doctrine, solemnity, fear, and guilt, dependency, and obedience. For the leader, psychologically healthy knows his own limits. And that's the important one that I want to bring up. A good leader knows his own limits. Ash Mufareh empowers individuals trustworthy and accountable. But unhealthy, destructive influence would be a narcissistic or sociopathic person, elitist with grandiose, like maybe he says he was sent by God. The person's power hungry, secretive and deceptive, like, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes right now, but we don't want to talk about it until later. And then claims absolute authority, like, just listen to me. And it goes on to do that for organizations as well. Egalitarianism, checks and balances, informed consent, individuality, diversity, means create end, encourages growth, and you're free to leave anytime without anything happening to you. If you're ever a part of any type of community and you leaving that community causes some kind of backlash or smear campaign against you, or a bunch of people to do a bunch of streams about you or attack your character in some way, you've left a cult, not a community. Unhealthy organization, of course, is elitism, authoritarian structure, deceptive, manipulative, clones people, ends justify the means, preserves its own power, and it basically tells you that you don't have any legitimate reasons to leave. What would you do without us and our organization? Without us, you would be nothing. That kind of thing, right? Independent research must include critics and former members of the relevant group or organization. Lastly, researchers need to hold their own belief and value systems while learning about other ideological systems. Then we have the BITE model of authoritarian control. The control of behavior, information, thought, and emotion as a guide to evaluating groups and situations. The bite model is derived from the work of psychiatrists Robert J. Lifton and Louis Jolyon West, psychologists Edgar Sheen and Margaret Singer, all of whom were involved in researching communist brainwashing. The bite model presents a simpler, more concrete way to help people understand the complex phenomena entailed with cults and other forms of mind control. The model began with the realization that Leon Festinger, PhD's famous theory of cognitive dissonance, held a vital theoretical key. Festinger argued that beliefs have cognitive, affective, and behavioral components. He was studying a UFO-focused cult and was very curious why people did not leave the group when the spacecraft failed to appear on the designated mountain at the appointed time. In fact, the contrary occurred. Believers became even more firmly committed to their belief in aliens and the leader's knowledge about them. And you guys are watching that happen in On Passive over and over again, right? That's what's happening in On Passive. They say we're going to launch at the end of September. The end of September comes. Nothing launches. You guys go, oh, now people are going to leave. It's over. I go, oh, you'll be surprised. Wait, they'll actually believe in Ash more. And then they believe in Ash more. And they spend weeks talking about how amazing everything is and On Passive. And you guys are sitting here going, the hell, you know? So Festinger proposed that human beings dislike conflict and prefer to have consistency or congruence so that thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are aligned. A lot of people feel like they're living different lives if they're not all in alignment. These ideas laid the foundation for all cognitive behavioral therapy. Individuals who make public commitments, behaviors that become at variance with their private beliefs, will often change their beliefs to be congruent with their behavior. Thus, influencers attempt to get others to act in certain ways so that they will think in different ways. The bite model uses these three components, behavior, thought, and emotion, and adds information as a fourth and overlapping component. The model proposes that behavior, thought, emotional, and information control constitute the four components of mind control. Human beings operate on the information they receive to function. Our brain relies on our senses to filter and evaluate data so that we can decide how to act. Sensory deprivation and information overload create conditions in which human beings cannot function optimally. Cults may suppress the real self and build a new identity over it that is controlled by the external authority or cult leader. This is a crucial insight into understanding the dissociative disorder 300.15 cited in the DSM-5 5th edition. The bite model identifies and fleshes out specific components that categorize destructive cult policies. Since 1988, tens of thousands of individuals have reported that the bite model has helped them identify their involvement in a destructive cult, enabling them to exit and reclaim their power. Its value has been demonstrated by individuals involved in a wide variety of destructive cults and controlling relationships across the world. Below are the bite model criteria. The more criteria present under each component, the more controlling the destructive relationship or group is determined to be. Behavior control. The ultimate goal of behavior control is to instill dependency on and obedience to the group, its ideology, and its leadership. All major life decisions must be approved or dictated by the group. A member who does not first get permission for major decisions faces punishment. Individualism is discouraged, and putting the group first is mandatory, even first above your own family and friends. Rigid rules and regulations are mandated and enforced. Thoughts, feelings, and activities of self or others must be reported to superiors. Oftentimes, they'll have people ratting each other out within the cult. And that is just brings all kinds of problems with the interpersonal relationships there, right? Makes it a lot more fearful for everyone that's involved to know that even one of their fellow members could kind of like rat them out to the high ups. See that a lot in Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, that kind of thing. It's a problem. In typical cult setting, clothing and hairstyle are among the factors used to create and enforce conformity. Members frequently need to live with approved people in approved housing. Control of diet as well as fasting is often used. Of course, sexuality is strictly controlled and regulated by cult leadership. Typically, members are sleep deprived. Research has demonstrated that individuals on average require 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Members are typically financially exploited, manipulated, or made entirely dependent. Most cults use some kind of exploitment, like, NXIVM had women handing in collateral, and that's kind of creepy to think about. There's a lot of YouTube communities out here that make girls hand in nudie photos. That always kind of irks me a little bit too, because that's what that is. You gotta be careful of that. It's kind of scary. Says here that usually group indoctrination and self-indoctrination sessions demand many hours of members' lives. And that's the thing about this, is that you start off being indoctrinated by the group, and they almost indoctrinate you to the point where you can then indoctrinate yourself further by yourself. It's kind of like when they say, oh, do the self-development classes. Right? And then they say to you, well, we have a self-development class you can do. You just got to pay $2,000 for it. And then you're supposed to just be like, okay. And then you go to that class by yourself. All right? You're there, you're doing it. And then you end up kind of teaching yourself the cult's doctrine and indoctrinating yourself. And it's kind of a scary thought. And again, hours and hours are dedicated to this. We see it in the form of videos and webinars so much with cults now. The internet serves as a 24/7 indoctrination tool for mind controllers to keep members fully committed. There is little non-group leisure time or vacation time away. And if you are on vacation, you can be on vacation, but just make sure you make it to the webinars, Those in power distribute rewards for good behavior and punishments for bad behavior. And those are in quotations because oftentimes what the cults consider to be good behavior is not what the rest of you would consider to be good behavior. And what the cult considers to be bad behavior is really what we would consider questioning, critical thinking. Maybe starting to become a whistleblower. So to us, that's the good behavior. You know what I mean? It's a little backwards. That's why it's in the quotations. If you're wondering, it's because it's not inherently good if it's coming from a cult, Information control. Analyzing information is vital to understanding undue influence. For example, an ethical group will inform newcomers about who the group is, what its members believe, and what is expected of them if they become members. Just that part alone is something that I stress over and over and over again, especially when I'm covering MLMs. If you ever go to join a group and they're like, Well, we can only give you a little bit of the information now, but don't worry, after you reach a couple levels in our group, then you'll know a little more. And then once you make it to double Pikachu Diamond, then you'll know everything about us. And it's like, no. All right, informed consent means that I get to know everything about you before I decide if I want to join. There should be no secrets. I should know exactly what's expected of me when I'm a part of this group. And I shouldn't have any questions. I should know what everything's all about. But that's not how cults work, right? On an ethical group, like a cult, uses deception by lying outright, withholding vital information, or distorting information to make it appear more acceptable. You know, like saying that the SEC doesn't matter. Who cares if the SEC is suing us for $108 million? They don't matter. They're just trying to stop us. Like, no, you literally broke the law. Often, all three types of lying are used, undermining the legal right of citizens to have informed consent to make decisions in their best interests. And that's the thing, is that you have the right to know every single thing about a group, club, organization, church, company, whatever word you want to put in there. You have the right to know everything about it before you commit to it. And if asking questions is an issue, critical thinking skills are not encouraged, then it's probably at least culty, you know? Excuse me. Authoritarian cults usually have a pyramid shape with circles that emanate from its base, like this. That is the pyramid right there. At the very top here, we have the top leaders. You'll notice that it says top leaders and not just CEO. Just want to make that known. Then we have the sub-leaders. We have the core devotees. We have the rank and file members. Then we have some fringe members on the outside. You know, they're not quite indoctrinated into this pyramid yet. Data flows from the top downwards. Again, in all other organizations, companies, and etc., it goes from the bottom up. So, you know, the senior leadership decides who needs to know what and when people should know anything at all. There can be sharp discrepancies between what members hear versus what outsiders learn. The individual's level of involvement needs to be considered in this framework. So when you're trying to decide, you got to kind of look at it and go, okay, are they a top leader, a sub-leader, core devotees? Once you kind of know where they sit on this, it will help you sort of know how to help them. Because, for example, somebody that's a fringe member doesn't need as much convincing and evidence to leave than somebody that's a core devotee would. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a good thing to kind of try to place anyone. Like I do it with On Passive all the time. I'm like, okay, where would this person fall on the pyramid? A lot of them end up either being the sub-leaders or the core devotees. You know, the top leaders would, of course, be like Marty DeGarmo, Red Redfern, Chris Johnson, etc., right? And then over the top leaders, you can argue that the CEO is just sitting right here, or the cult leader, sitting right at the very top, kind of hovering over the pyramid. There can be sharp discrepancies between what members hear versus what outsiders learn. The individual's level of involvement needs to be considered in this framework. Individuals experience the unduly influencing organization at very different levels of involvement. By far, the vast majority of members are fringe members and are only ideologically influenced, but they are not part of the rank and file indoctrination. When a forensic evaluation on social influence is conducted, determining how high up in the command and control structure the person is placed is essential. It really is. Leadership might mean greater privileges, separate housing, higher salary, access to internal leadership documents and meetings. Unfortunately, like the more indoctrinated you are, the more so-called rewards you get, but also the more harm comes to you. And it's almost like the more harm they cause to you in their cult, the more they'll reward you along the way. And so oftentimes members find themselves indoctrinated in this weird fog of, oh, well, it really hurts me how I've had to given up parts of my sense of self for this thing. Oh, but it's really great how they have opened up so many opportunities for me. And it's a constant battle between what's more important, the hurt they're causing or the positive things they're doing for me. And then on top of that, you know, you also have the toxic positivity. You're told to ignore your fight or flight response. And with all that going on, you oftentimes convince yourself that the rewards the cult gives you and the good things that the cult does for you is worth all of the pain and indoctrination and abuse that you go through. The same thing happens to people that are in domestic violence relationships with their spouses. They'll go, oh, well, he's so sweet to me, brings me flowers sometimes, you know, even though he beats me up every night, at least the next morning he brings me flowers and love bombs me. I look forward to that part. And even sex trafficking victims go through very much the same thing, especially if they have kind of like a pimp around. The pimp will often shower them with lavish gifts and having this wonderful high maintenance lifestyle. But then, you know, some really disgusting things are happening to the person at the same time. And they're almost willing to put up with the abuse. And in a cult setting, it, like I said, it's almost like you'll put up with more abuse, the more rewards you get. And it's so bizarre to think that, like, you know, you're sitting there getting abused in the worst ways. They'll convince you to almost be grateful that you're getting that abuse because that will then lead to a future fabulous award. It's like in the case of David Berg and Mary Berg. You know, like she was told, you just have to marry and have sex with your grandfather. And then you have an in for all eternity into heaven. You'll be the highest regarded woman in all of heaven. So the women go, you know, maybe I don't really want to deal with being abused as a child sexually by David Berg, but it will all be worth it. What I'm going through right now will all be worth it because of that big reward at the end. And it's kind of like they become like a self-martyr, you know, and it's a really big fuck around that happens to their heads. And that also helps in the indoctrination, of course, you know. Another thing is access to internal leadership documents and meetings that you might get. And oftentimes this is given out slowly to people as they go up in ranks so that you're only finding out a little bit more and then a little bit more and then a little bit more here and there. And then it also lessens how awful everything is that you're finding out. And for a lot of people, that's when they'll leave because that's when they start to find out that it's actually a cult. You know, once they start getting access to the internal documents and these meetings, oftentimes by the higher ups and stuff, they go, wait, what am I in? I guess it depends on how indoctrinated they are by that point. Some people are easier to indoctrinate than others for whatever reason, all personal. It might be a title and therefore higher status, but without independent decision-making ability. Members of destructive cults might get promoted and demoted several times over years of involvement. One sec, guys. Just telling me he was done. So, sorry, where was I in this? Oh, well, we'll just keep going. It might be a title and therefore a higher status, but without independent decision-making ability. Members of destructive cults might get promoted and demoted several times over years of involvement. This, too, is significant. The position in the cult is also significant because lower-level members might not have access to outside sources of news at all. The legal department will know much more information that exists at the upper levels of the pyramid than the Department of Public Relations. And they do that so that it's almost like the information is also spread out. So not any one department in the cult has all of the information. It's only the leader of the cult that has all of the information about it. And maybe he has a few guys at the top with him that are his like right-hand people or women in the case of Keith Raniere with Allison Mack, right? And it's that kind of thing where a few people know everything that's up, but then all of the different departments will only have a small portion of what's really going on. So they don't know everything that's going on. And when you spread out the information and the truth like that, it just makes it so that not any one person can really find out everything, no matter how high up they get. Members must spy on others, including family and friends. Improper thoughts, feelings, and actions must be reported to leadership. Otherwise, the person who fails to report will get into trouble too. And that's the thing, is that this weird thing happens where it's like, are you going to sacrifice your friend or yourself? And it's so dangerous in any group to play the group members against each other. It's not an empowering thing, and it's not actually the way that a group can do well. Like in a decent group setting, you know, the leader would want all of the members to get along and to all be friends, to all encourage each other, empower each other, have loyalty to each other. They wouldn't encourage members to spy on each other and like report back to them and stuff. You know, this is like, that's not what you should be doing. And a lot of times they do have a punishment system. So people are put in a position where it's like, okay, this person just told me something. For whatever reason, oftentimes they believe that the leader is almost omnipresent and will know about it. So they think, okay, I know about this, so I have to go and tell a higher up in the cult. Because if later on down the line it comes out, and then they find out that this person, my friend, told me about it, I'm going to get punished. So I'm just going to tell on my friend so that they get punished. And then I also get awarded. Like, oh, good job. Thank you for telling us, you know? And oftentimes members that spy and report to the higher ups and rat these people out, they're the ones that are getting all of the rewards and are advancing in the cult. If there's like if it's like NXIVM or an MLM or Scientology and there's a way to advance, which by the way, most of these cults do have a way to advance, even if they're not MLM related. They still have some kind of system where you have to work your way up to be closer to the leader and by extension, closer to the goal or closer to God, right? So that's kind of another thing that they all have in common. Many groups use a buddy system to monitor and control its members, especially when they are out politicizing in public areas. The information gained about a member's past, either through formal confessionals or reporting, is used to maintain group control. These data include false confessions of childhood abuse that may have been remembered with false memories through suggestive counseling or group practices. If a member starts showing signs of wishing to leave the group, the leadership will typically use this information and the threat of disclosure to get the member back in line. You don't want to leave this group. Remember you told us how your daddy touched you when you were 7? I mean, it would be such a shame if the whole world knew about that and that information was outed and then your dad found out that you told us. I'm sure he wouldn't appreciate that. And oftentimes in these so-called confessionals, as it's stated here, these are false memories. And a lot of people go, well, who cares if it's false then? Why don't the people just leave and go, oh, well, it's because they usually also have something on them that's true. It's usually several different pieces that they have to give. So it's like, yeah, okay, sure, that one might be false and it might not bother them that the cult calls up their dad and tells them about this alleged memory, but then they might also have some nude pictures of this person or some actual true secret of this person. And it's all like, they don't know which one is going to be released to the public if they leave, you know? So they stay. Mind control cults, especially political cults, rely on the extensive use of propaganda. MLMs are also very big on their extensive use of propaganda. I mean, On Passive definitely got that down. If they do anything right, it's the propaganda. Websites and public and private videos are available 24/7, and meetings are often live streamed. Bigger groups have publication departments that churn out newsletters, magazines, journals, audio tapes, videotapes, podcasts, blogs, apps, and other media. A lot of these cults and MLMs have their own apps. Famous people are quoted, often without their permission and totally out of context, but in a way that supports the credibility of the group. To be independent thinkers, people require information from a wide variety of reputable sources. Cults indoctrinate members to distrust critics, former members, and any media that is negative. It's very frustrating as well. Because it's like, if anyone knows about a cult, it would be a former member. It's like, don't you want to know what the former members of this group have gone through before you join it, Some groups tell members to avoid newspapers, books, articles, TV, radio, and any academic, science-based information. Some controllers keep believers so busy that they do not have time to think, check things out, or make outside relationships. And oftentimes decision-making is very split of the moment. Like, you got to do it right now. You're going to join this coaching program or not? It costs $2,000. What, you don't have the money? So what? You don't want to pay for your personal development? You don't care about yourself or being successful? And it's like, Jesus Christ. I want some time to think on it. It's $2,000. Well, signups end today, so you don't want to seem like you're not eager. And then the person thinks, oh, no, I definitely don't want to seem like I'm not eager. Like, I don't care about my personal development. Yeah, I better pay for that right now. Nobody's ever given the time to, think on it, research it. It's now or never, all the time. Other groups control believers through their cell phones with GPS tracking, frequent texting, or calls. Some authoritarian groups have countless front groups to hide the parent organization. I was recently in a community that decided that they would open up 10 different Discords that you had to go through in order to make it to the final Discord that was the actual Discord that everyone hung out in. And I went, yeah, I think this is turning into a cult, guys. That's what cults do. Thought control. Hypnotic and suggestive strategies that induce an altered state of consciousness are often used to reprogram people's thoughts and memories. Other techniques to induce thought control range from hours of tedious, monotonous lectures several times a week, where members must memorize and regurgitate the correct answers to audible prayers, chanting, speaking in tongues, and meditation in ways that reduce critical thinking. Eyes closed visualizations and guided meditation techniques can allow a group to insert thoughts and beliefs into their members. The ideology of authoritarian groups, as discussed previously, is typically all or nothing, black and white, us versus them, and good versus evil. Members believe the doctrine to be the ultimate truth that is sacred and scientific. Members learn thought-stopping techniques to keep themselves pure and resist evil thoughts. And that's another, a lot of cults use therapeutic things, right? Like thought-stopping techniques. That is something that therapists will tell people to use in order to have more positive self-talk. So when you're part of a group that claims that they're all about self-development, and then they're doing these types of thought-stopping techniques on you and stuff, you tend to think, oh, well, it's just like therapy does. So it's fine. I mean, they can't be doing anything worse to me than my therapist would do if they were teaching me this for positive self-talk. That's so dangerous. It's dangerous. The language system of closed groups can be an actual dialect, not shared by outsiders. When they start to replace words with other words, like problems become wrinkles, money becomes apples, things like that. Thought-terminating cliches make complex ideas into platitudinous buzzwords known only by other members. Not all groups give members new names. However, when they do, it's a powerful technique that supports changes in the person's identity. MLMs basically tell you to strip down all of the beliefs and everything you were taught and then to push yourself while ignoring your fight and flight response, or your urgency to bolt, as it was called in NXIVM. And I think while that's going on, it all helps indoctrinate you further, So not all groups give members new names, but they might give them new identities. And I feel like MLMs really do that whole new identity thing, because it's like, step outside your box, come outside your box and do things that you're uncomfortable with. And I think we need to all be very weary of anything that tells you to not pay attention to your comfort levels or your fight or flight response, right? If things are saying, if you feel uncomfortable, that's okay, it's probably not okay. Like, you feeling uncomfortable might be your body trying to tell you, get the hell out of here. And that's not something that you should ignore. And it's hard to find the line between like just pushing yourself and challenging yourself and then that, you know what I mean? But I swear there is one. Critical questions about the leader, the doctrine, or the organization's policies are avoided or forbidden. Rational analysis, critical thinking, and even constructive criticism are deemed wrong. When members express this, it is turned around on them as a weakness of character and lack of devotion. All other groups and their belief systems are illegitimate, evil, or at the very least, not useful. So, emotional control. Individuals are often initially love-bombed and flattered, sometimes with overt flirting, to make them feel special. However, cult love is conditional upon being a good cult member and is quickly withdrawn if the person makes trouble by asking problematic questions. Members are required to always be grateful and happy. Many of them say, like, thank your leader. Your leader's sacrifices for you. Make sure you're grateful to them, as they are part of the chosen people who know the truth. They believe they have the key to the world's salvation. Maybe the key to, saving all of the world's salvation. Members often sing songs written about the leader, the doctrine, or the group to keep positive. Listening to music and especially singing cult songs to themselves, as well as in the community, helps members access positive emotional states, brings them to toxic positivity. Members learn techniques like thought stopping and emotion stopping, mainly to block feelings of homesickness, anger towards leadership, or doubt. Whenever individuals feel depressed, anxious, or fearful, they are encouraged to feel guilty and engage in practices to further surrender themselves to the great leader or group. And that's why that's so dangerous. Whenever there is a problem, the group and leader are always right, and it's the members' fault. If members feel healthy emotions, like sexual attraction to someone who's not approved, they are told they are evil and sinful or tempting Satan. Likewise, jealousy, greed, and envy are considered negative, so members deny and suppress those feelings, which, if you know anything about suppressing feelings, it means that they come out in other ways. Sometimes members must repent publicly and confess these negative emotions. They are made to feel guilty, selfish, unworthy, and even unspiritual. The group can even try to make them feel guilty for their religion of origin, race, country, and personal history. Yes, personal history, especially trauma. Again, if you're ever part of a group that wants to know about you and your life, let's say they want to be friends with you, you open up to them a bit, and then that information is used against you in any way, shape, or form, you left a cult. I left the cult of TCAP. The system of being in the cult always keeps people frustrated and dependent. Cult leaders want members to derive positive self-esteem by being a part of the group, not by individual accomplishments. You shouldn't have any individuality. That's how they believe. Everything should be for the greater good of the group. Not you, the group, the cult, the leader. Guilt and fear are the two most frequently used emotional control techniques. Because people don't like feeling guilty. It's one of the worst feelings in the world. And people will act out of fear. One nearly universal technique used by cults was first described as phobia indoctrination. Obviously, phobias can be devastating and disrupt a person's ability to function. Cult leaders either piggyback their programming onto pre-existing phobias or implant phobias into members' minds to such an extent that the members cannot imagine being happy and fulfilled without the group. Where else are you going to find success if not with this group, right? In a cult's members' thinking, leaving the group equals loss of existence. Leaving the group equals loss of existence. A lot of them feel like being a part of the group, they are existing to the best of their abilities. They're all working towards being the best version of themselves. All of them are based on some form of self-development, like I said. And so to them, leaving the group, it's literally letting go of everything that they know and are comfortable with. And although they're told to step outside of their comfort zones, that is the one way that they are told not to step outside of their comfort zone and to always stay comfortable within the group. Which is kind of interesting. So to them, leaving the group isn't just leaving that MLM. It's leaving all of their core belief system, leaving all of their friends, leaving their status, leaving the appreciation that they gain, the chance at success. It's literally leaving their existence as they know it. Phobias can be diverse and range from fears about spiritual health, like going to hell, being possessed by demons, losing one's soul, and physical health, like getting cancer, AIDS, being killed by a car, to psychological hell. Going insane, being committed to a mental hospital, being given drugs, or never being a success. And that never being a success one is a really big one in MLMs. And never being able to help people. A lot of people that get into MLMs, that's all they want to do is just help other people. And they're told this is the only way that you will ever be able to help anyone. And for them, that's a big thing. So if they leave that group, they'll never be able to help anyone else again. That's what they're kind of taught. And that can be a really crippling thing to be faced with, Individuals can be emotionally threatened or coerced into remaining members, even if they no longer believe, because they fear being called bad or sinful by leadership. Members might be afraid that family and friends will stop interacting with them unless they repent, return, and toe the line. I was a part of a community once, and when I left this community, the person told me that if I ever left their community, they would ruin my entire online career. And they used to tell me this all the time. They'd be like, if you ever leave me, I'm going to make sure that nobody ever trusts you out here again, blah, 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 blah. And for a little while, that was really, really scary to me. I was like, oh my God, I can never, ever leave this person in this group now, because if I leave this person in this group, they're going to attack me. But eventually, I did. I did leave that person in the group, and they did attack me. And it wasn't that bad. It wasn't all that bad. And I was kind of like, this is what I was scared of, this. So oftentimes the fear can be really irrational, But I remember thinking, I don't want to lose all of these new friends that I just made. And that's what happens. Because like it says here, members might be afraid the family and friends will stop interacting with them unless they repent, return, and toe the line. And I was always told, you just need to come back and apologize. Do a live stream with me. And then everything will be okay and everyone will leave you alone. Well, I didn't go back. I still haven't returned to that community. I refuse to return to that community. They can keep on doing their live streams. Go off! And honestly, now it's been a few years and I've been pretty good at ignoring it. But I just remember how scary it was at the beginning and how awful it was at the beginning. Emotional coercion. Some members' livelihoods may be dependent upon remaining in the group. Emotional coercion is especially forceful for individuals who were raised in the group and convinced to avoid the outside world as evil and therefore do not know anyone who can help them exit. That cute redhead is Satan testing you. It's kind of crazy, though, to think about, Some groups will threaten physical and psychological violence, blackmail, and extortion if one tries to leave the authoritarian group. These threats can be directed not only to members, but also to their loved ones. There are communities out here that will get information about you from your real life and information and pictures of you. And then when you leave, they try to exploit you. And it's weird because the internet and YouTube actually tends to stick up for the perpetrator and the abuser in these situations, oftentimes more so than the victims. For example, Negs used to run a community like this, where if you were a part of his community and you were one of the main girls in there, then you had to flirt with him. You had to send him nudes. Savannah sent him a nude. There are now people running around the internet going, oh, this girl playing victim all the damn time. And it's like, do you know what it's like to be a part of a cultish type of group, to be made to give your nudes over and then to be exploited with them for several months? Okay, cool. I do, though. And it's not fun. And honestly, people like that, they deserve to play victim a little bit. Are they not allowed to? Are they not allowed to? And be wary of anyone who says you're playing victim after they've victimized you, or after they've watched you actually get victimized by somebody else. And they're sitting back here going, oh, look at that person playing victim. Yeah, because they were a victim, asshole. Why are you shaming the victim and not the fucking perp? What you doing? Get it together. The Shefflin social influence model, SIM, not Sims. Experts have two functions in the present context. The first is to collect and evaluate the scientific evidence relevant to the claim of undue influence, and the second is to testify about these data as they pertain to the facts of the case. Because the relevant audience, judges and jurors, is not scientifically trained, the complex published literature must be explained in terms understandable to those who are unacquainted with this specialized knowledge. For example, in cases involving what was called the battered woman syndrome, where one domestic partner would periodically physically beat the other partner, jurors generally thought to themselves, why would the victim stay with the batterer? I would just leave. Using this reasoning, jury verdicts were hard to obtain, and monetary rewards were small. Women were getting beaten and then told, okay, well, maybe you just shouldn't have looked at it wrong, you know? But when social scientists demonstrated the vitality of the concept of learned helplessness, and testifying experts carefully explained this idea to jurors, battered domestic partners began to get substantial financial and emotional relief. Similarly, when social scientists discovered what is now called Stockholm Syndrome, jurors could understand why victims often bond with their captors. In cult cases, victims often identify with their cult leaders and refuse to testify against them. In some situations, lying to protect the leader is considered heavenly deception. In the complex world of undue influence, what was needed was a model that expert witnesses could use in the legal system that offered an easily understood framework for evaluating complex scientific data. One major objection that has been raised to applying undue influence more widely is what is called the slippery slope argument. Undue influence, like reasonable doubt and unconscionable contracts, does not have easily defined contours. It is a matter of judgment, not measurement. Thus, putting limits on it is possible only in specific cases and only after enough judicial rulings define the applicable contours. Some commentators believe that undue influence falls within that same category, and indeed it does. I also think that it falls in that category. However, the fact that a slope is slippery does not mean that the slope does not exist. I love that. Indeed, criminal cases are decided by proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Many courts have refused to define reasonable doubt to jurors because the definition in itself, if we had one, would be more complex than letting the jurors get the underlying sense of the idea that the proof to convict must be exceptionally high, bordering on certainty. While the dividing line between due and undue influence may not be easy to define, the general sense is easily understood. You just can't treat people that way and get away with it. The SIM framework describes a robust social context that an expert witness can analyze in a case for presentation to the judge or jury. Interviews with family members and friends are quite helpful, as is collecting any writings by the influencee that show a radical change of personality and belief systems. And again, your family members and friends can do that as well. That's why it's so important to have those interviews, because they can speak it's hard sometimes to describe yourself, and it's very important for you to do so, though, and for you to have your own voice and tell your own story. But it's very hard to kind of describe yourself sometimes, the changes in you. I remember I was in an abusive relationship before I was with my husband for 7 years. It was a live-in. We were common law married. We were buying a house, blah, 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 blah. And after I left, one of my in real life friends, about, I don't know, a year or so later, came to visit me. And at that point, it would have been a couple years later, came to visit me. At that point, I had just had Hannah. And like Trevor and I were obviously married and together. And like when he showed up in my house with one of his friends, he was just like, I don't recognize you. Like, I don't know this version of you. The person that I know was a shell, and they almost had no personality left. And I used to get really worried about you, and I used to come over and check on you just to make sure you were okay and stuff. Because, like, I was worried about you. Like, you didn't look healthy, not physically, not mentally. But, like, I show up here today, and you just seem like a completely, like, different person. Like, you have your own whole personality, and you're allowed to be yourself in this house. And it's just so wonderful to see. But see, that's a change that I wouldn't have been able to see in myself necessarily. I can describe how, being in a domestic violence situation versus being in a healthy relationship and how it was different for me. But I didn't notice as much change in myself as my family or my friends who knew me through that relationship or before and after it, for example. They were like, you are a completely different person. And like those that knew me before said that they watched the life just drain out of me during those 7 years. And it was so weird because during that time, while I was in that relationship, I didn't see any changes in myself. How I looked, how I acted, nothing. I thought I was doing great until I moved to Ottawa and they were like, you're severely underweight and we're going to hospitalize you. And I was like, wow, what's going on, man? Maybe I am affected more than I thought. So that's why it's kind of important to hear from other people, because their point of view on your change is just as important almost as yours is. They might see things that you don't see. This is kind of interesting. So that's why that's really, really helpful to have interviews with family members and friends. Alan W. Shefflin, JD, became concerned that victims of cults could not obtain financial relief in courts because judges would not hear their cases. Plaintiffs sought to present their claims using theories of brainwashing, mind control, and thought reform. Because these were not recognized legal theories, judges threw these cases out of court. What was needed was 1, a legal theory acceptable to courts, and 2, a way of explaining complex ideas to judges and juries. The first problem was solved by using the well-recognized legal theory of undue influence. That opened the courtroom door. The second problem was solved by the creation of the SIM framework, which was inspired by Rudyard Kipling's poem, The Elephant's Child. I keep 6 honest, serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when, and how and where and who. Individuals generally take in information more easily with their eyes than with their ears. Imagine the sim on a chart or presentation. It is easily understood, it structures the interaction between the parties, and it lets jurors see precisely where the relevant science may be used to prove each of the 6 elements. So here's one here. So the influencer is who, influencer's motive is why, influencer's methods is what and how, the circumstance is where and when, and then the influencee's receptivity and vulnerability is who, and the consequences are the what. In summary, it's clear that the influence continuum and bite model offers significant behavioral components of the social influence model. The influence continuum and bite model aim to develop a quantitative instrument that is both reliable and valid in measuring the constructs of the bite model. They also attempt to offer solid criteria for determining the destructive unhealthy end of the influence continuum, which has been described by the other respected models of thought reform and brainwashing. And that brings us to our next article. And this one is again just a new framework exploring efficiency. If our current means of detecting undue influence are not sufficient, can the BITE, behavioral information, thought, and emotional model of authoritarian control, be of assistance to better understand the feasibility and efficiency of such an approach and validate its use as a reliable instrument? We conducted a study which is detailed herein. So this part's the study. An anonymous online survey was created on SurveyMonkey and set out to participants to collect data for this study. This approach enabled us to move forward with an institutional review board exemption. Participants were recruited online via social media and blog posts. Around 14% of participants were self-identified as a current member of a high control group living mainly in the US and other parts of the world. From the data collected, 82% of participants reported they were former members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Church of Scientology, multi-level marketing MLM groups, and other high control groups. Some of you may have remembered this study because we shared it out and we were a part of it. Convenience and snowball sampling methods were used for distributing the link to friends and family members. Participants electronically consented to participate in the research study. They were assured confidentiality and anonymity as none of the IP addresses were recorded. In addition, participation was completely voluntary and participants could withdraw at any time. Extensive demographic information from 144 participants was collected. Less than 50% of the sample was incomplete. Participants were asked detailed questions regarding their involvement in the group in question, duration of their involvement in the group, and so on. A summary of the demographics is provided. So 32.78% were male, which means 67.22 were female. 79% were in the US and 20% were in other places. And here we have the highest level of education. And I just want to show you high school, but college. College is high at 41%. Graduate school is 17%. We're going to notice this diagram, this part of the diagram right here, actually proves that the smarter you are, the more likely you will join a cult. Those with only middle school and high school education or below, they didn't join it as much as those who received secondary education after high school. And this just goes to show you it's not uneducated people that join. It's a big stigma, you know? We can do that tomorrow for sure, Staccato. here we have the percentage of those who were employed. And I think one of the biggest things that people seem to think that it's only people that are unemployed that join like MLMs and cults and stuff. No. Almost 50% of these people were employed full time, as you can see. Only 7.25% are retired, and just under 6% were disabled and not able to work. Here it shows that 90% of the people that filled out the survey were white. And I don't know if this really shows the race or ethnicity of cults. I feel like a lot of cults, especially now, they prey on people that are not white. We're seeing it more and more and more, and I would argue that On Passive is an example of that as well. This is just the people that did this study, right? Which it kind of makes sense for. As I don't want to sound bad or anything, but most of the people in the anti-cult movement are white. We don't have a lot of people of color in this movement. We need more. Please come and join us. Please do. To quantify the bite model, 4 instruments were created on each component of bite. It took approximately 30 to 40 minutes for participants to complete this survey. There were 132 items developed from the 4 instruments of bite. 31 items were written to represent behavioral control, 33 items to represent information control, 29 items to represent thought control, and 39 items to represent emotional control. The response format was a 6-point like scale that ranged from 1 through 6. So 1 is never, 2 was rarely, 3 was occasionally, 4 meant frequently, 5 is usually, and 6 is always. The response labels were selected to assess the frequency of control on each of these elements. There were 20 questions based on demographics, residing country, employment status, highest education obtained, etc. The raw data gathered from all the participants who completed the bite model survey and demographic questions were exported from SurveyMonkey into an IBM statistical package for social sciences. All the raw data were cleaned and labeled and made ready for analysis. The research question for this study was, what are the underlying dimensions of the items of behavioral information, thought, and emotional control model of mind control? Factor analysis was conducted using the principal component analysis method, and the following results were obtained using a scree plot, KMO, and Bartlett's test, highest item loadings, and table of the total variance. The scree plot is used to determine the number of factors to retain in principal component analysis. The procedure of finding statistically significant factors and components is shown in the figure. This plot confirmed the decision to go with one-factor extraction. Bartlett's test examines whether the correlation matrix is an identity matrix. This condition just means that the variables are completely independent of each other. Thus, the factor model is inappropriate. Identity matrix can be ruled out if the p-value of the test is less than 0.005. As seen in Table 2, KMO value is 0.970, which is considered excellent as it exceeds 0.5. So there it is. There is the bite instrument with KMO and Bartlett's test. Researchers computed Bartlett's test of sphericity and showed significant sphericity of p equals 0.000, which is less than 0.05, suggesting that the factors that form the variable are satisfactory. Factor loadings were reasonably strong, ranging from about 0.84 to 0.65. The items were examined for high to low factor loadings. All the items below 0.65 were excluded. So here we go. And it says like things like the group's policy was us versus them. If you deviated from the group's techniques, you would suffer a terrible fate, and you had to say whether or not that happened. Love bombing was used. You know? And it seems like almost all of these were hit. As only one major factor was derived from the analysis, we decided to name that factor authoritarian control. Per Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, the principal definition of the word authoritarian is of relating to or favoring blind submission authority. However, Encyclopedia Britannica defines authoritarianism as the principle of blind submission to authority as opposed to individual freedom of thought and action, which may be a better fit. The 4 byte components explained a cumulative total of 49.33% of the variance. The first component factor explained a total of 35.07% of the variance. The analysis of the remaining 65% variance yielded no concrete significant factor. As this variance was low, insignificant, and mainly data noise, it was disregarded. These data were represented in the screen plots by a long horizontal line at the bottom in the figure. The content of the items in the first factor resembled those in the underlined literature review model and was labeled as control. In summary, principal component analysis of the questionnaires items produced an interpretable one-factor simple structure. What do these results mean? And what does this mean for real-life settings? The next installment will evaluate these results. In addition, it explains how this new framework will help the legal system provide a better tool to evaluate individuals under undue influence to provide them with the justice they deserve. So now we're on to the third, which is, again, the results. Does the behavior, information, thought, and emotional bite model of authoritarian control, a new framework for evaluating undue influence, offer a statistically valid new construct called authoritarian control? The 4 components have statistically shown that the bite model of behavior, information, thought, and emotional control boils down to nearly one factor: authoritarian control. The use of the term authoritarian requires mention of concerns that arose from Theodore W. Adorno's original authoritarian personality study with its F scale of authoritarianism. And right now, I'm actually reading the book How to Be a Dictator: The Cult of Personality in the 20th Century by Frank Dickauter. Dickauter? Anyway, I'm reading that, and it's giving me a very big insight into authoritarian control, to be honest. Highly recommend. Just saying. Adorno used psychoanalytic groundwork and focus on individual personality. The bite model does not look at a person's susceptibility, although this is an important focus within the social influence model proposed by Alan W. Shefflin. The bite model offers a way to evaluate the social, psychological, and behavioral forces exerted on individuals to recruit them and retain their membership. Furthermore, there was criticism that the Adorno research was aimed at individuals who were politically right of center and not politically left of center. The influence continuum and bite models posit that there can be authoritarian control in any kind of relationship or political orientation: right, left, religious, psychotherapy, or multi-level marketing, MLM, as long as the group relies on using these components as policy. The bite model of authoritarian control is primarily a social, psychological, behavioral construct that offers a unique way to analyze healthy and unhealthy influence. Out of 144 participants, 79% belong to the United States and just over 20 belong to other countries like Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Spain, and so forth. The majority of participants, 67%, were female, 32% were male. Similarly, most participants were educated and employed. 41% went to college and 30% had a master's or doctoral degree. 70% of participants had either full-time or part-time employment, while approximately 30% of the population was unemployed, retired, or disabled. The white Caucasian population was the majority in answering the survey, with a total of 90%. Approximately 2% were Black African Americans and 5% of multiple ethnicities. 99% of people were comfortable answering the survey in the English language. A large percentage of individuals, around 60%, were born or raised in a high-control organization. That includes Christianity, by the way. Most respondents belong to the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in other words, that is kind of Mormonism, Scientology, People of Praise, Humanism, Atheism, Christianity, and MLM groups. Although MLM's groups have bite model issues, fringe members would not likely experience high control. However, a percentage of individuals become consumed and then will invest most of their time and money in recruiting and indoctrination seminars, audio tapes, and books. In part 2 of this series, demographics like the Boy Scouts, Christianity, and atheists were discussed, although none of which have either the pyramid structure or concerning bite model criteria. Although the bite model has served people for more than 30 years in their exit of controlling relationships and groups, the study presented in this series is the first quantitative study that offers a scientific basis, which might prove useful for examining undue influence in judicial settings. Interestingly, most respondents were raised in only 2 groups, the Mormons or the Jehovah's Witnesses. Because our sample was a convenient sample, the generalizability of the results is limited. Controversial groups like authoritarian cults are challenging to study due to the nature of the authoritarian control. Members are either kept away from objective researchers or are coached in responding to questions. Former members often do not fully appreciate they left an authoritarian group, as even though they have exited by running away, by being kicked out, or through intervention counseling, they still carry the indoctrination, the guilt, the shame. It lasts far longer. The bite model and the influence continuum have a more than 30-year history of helping individuals worldwide realize that they were not in a healthy relationship or group. Using the bite model of authoritarian control in conjunction with Shefflin's social influence model, expert witnesses can deliver a detailed, easy-to-understand analysis of social influence to judges and juries, and the court can overcome the slippery slope objection. The authoritarian control construct can be utilized on a case-by-case basis and hopefully help establish a new legal precedent. The SIM framework offers this structure, which can be applied relative to many different cases. Of course, the jury or judge will decide if there was exploitation by an influencer over an influencee, right? Which makes sense. Sheen's model is used to describe the phenomenon of political or cult thought reform, coercive persuasion, or brainwashing. All the concepts and problematic behaviors are fundamentally anchored within the bite and influence continuum models. Additionally, the California law regarding undue influence as it applied to the elderly was discussed and aligns with the authoritarian control bite model. The federal trafficking law criteria fit the bite model, and the UK laws against coercive control include the construct of the bite model. Undue influence for the elderly California law. California probate law considers undue influence focused on the elderly to be a violation of their human rights. In 2010, a thorough research report on undue influence was prepared for the Borchardt Foundation Center for Law and Aging. The project director, Mary Joy Quinn, an RN with her master's, wrote Defining Undue Influence in Bifocal, a journal of the American Bar Association. In 2014, Quinn's article led to a California law concerning undue influence and the elderly. Several years later, a protocol for screening undue influence was developed to help Adult Protective Services evaluate whether elderly individuals have been subjected to undue influence, because oftentimes the abuse, is due to that. California Probate Code 86 states that undue influence has the same meaning as defined in Section 15,610.70 of the California Welfare and Constitutions Code. This is how California law, as well as the bite and influence continuum models, are more robust and about protecting elderly individuals not only from financial abuse by family and children, but from overall influence. Trafficking laws. Labor and sex trafficking is considered a crime internationally. In the United States, the government has also passed a law to make labor and sex trafficking illegal. Federal law defines trafficking as using force, fraud, or coercion to enslave a person. And based on this, technically, according to the U.S. federal law, a lot of MLMs would then be human trafficking. The elements of coercion, according to the U.S. Office on Trafficking in Persons, are outlined in this table. So, force includes physical restraint, physical harm, sexual assault, and beatings. Monitoring and confinement are often used to control victims, especially during early stages of victimization, to break down the victim's resistance. Fraud includes false promises regarding employment, wages, working conditions, love, marriage, or better life. Over time, there may be unexpected changes in work conditions, compensation, or debt agreements, or the nature of relationships. And coercion includes threats of serious harm to or physical restraint against any person, psychological manipulation, document confiscation and shame. So a lot of times, they'll take their passport, their ID, and fear-inducing threats to share information or pictures with others or report to authorities. On June 19th, 2019, was a lovely day. Keith Raniere was found guilty of 7 counts of trafficking for his involvement in the NXIVM cult. More recently, R. Kelly was also found guilty in trafficking in September of 2021. Raniere was sentenced to 120 years in prison, and Kelly faces a possible sentence of 10 years to life in prison. And here's the thing, I would argue that these crimes were very much the same. So I want to know why Keith Raniere gets 120 years, but R. Kelly only got 10 years to life. These 2 groundbreaking cases open the door for potential future successful trafficking cases against those who practice undue influence. The BITE model helps officials wishing to assist victims of trafficking as well as prosecute traffickers. It offers a robust way to explain undue influence to judges and juries trying cases. The FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin publishes an article titled "A Victim-Centered Approach to Sex Trafficking Cases," in which the BITE model is featured to help explain the mind control used to recruit and indoctrinate individuals into slavery. Concluding thoughts. Undue influencers are interested in telling us what to think. They are disinclined to teach us how to think. I like that. Undue influencers are interested in telling us what to think. They are disinclined to teach us how to think. That is our job. Our minds are like our homes, Both need our protection. As Thomas R. Dewar wisely observed, minds are like parachutes. They only function when open. Although it is true that generally we learn more about taking care of our bodies than we do about taking care of our minds, in fact, it is our mind that gives us our identity. We are our own first line of defense. Oftentimes we're our first critics too. If that line fails, we can take solace in the fact that there are others striving to enlist courts and legislators to be our second line of defense. That is the intent and purpose of the research presented in this series. For those of you that don't know, Dr. Stephen Hazan is a mental health professional and expert working for over 45 years in the field of destructive authoritarian control, undue influence in relationships, organizations, and belief systems after he became a part of the Moonies for 2 years. He is the author of 4 books, including Combating Cult Mind Control and Freedom of Mind. He founded the Freedom of Mind Resource Center, which is where we're getting a lot of our information from about cults, by the way. He is the developer of the BITE model of authoritarian control, the influence continuum model, and the strategic interactive approach. All are instrumental in helping empower individuals to exit authoritarian cults, trafficking, extremist groups, conspiracy theories, and controlling relationships. Basically, if you're somebody that speaks out about any of those things, you're doing yourself a great disservice to not know about coercive control, not look into Stephen Hassan's and other people's research on it, and be able to talk about this kind of thing and bring up the BITE model. I see a lot of content out here talking about conspiracy theories and extremist groups and stuff that don't ever touch on the BITE model. But it's just as important to explain to people that after you join these groups, you no longer control your own mind. You know? R. Kelly is serving 31 years in medium security. It's because R. Kelly's famous, probably. Probably. In German, the term Faschidiet describes a person highly educated in their field, but ignorant of everything else. I like it. I like that. It's not uneducated people who join. I think the average leader founder would contradict that. Maybe and on passive. They're definitely not educated in technology. And I think that that's a very, 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 very important thing to be educated in. I need a little break again. I'm sorry. I need to use the little girl's room. I need a little bit of break. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my, what can I put on for you guys? I was going to put on my, we already did the lovely commercials. So I don't want to play the commercials again for you. So just pay attention to the intro for a few minutes while I go to the ladies' room and grab myself a drink. And then we're going to be talking about an insight into cult manipulation. And I promise this is the last thing that I'll be reading to you today.
You think that you're okay, yeah?
Well, I don't know that I'm okay any more than anybody else is okay, but I at least live a happy life and a very full one. I have a happy marriage, and my kids are all cheerful, and I'm nobody's finding any fault with me, personally.
Do you ever think that you might be quite mad?
Oh, yes. The one man in the world who never believes he's mad is a madman.
You've probably heard of Scientology, whatever you have heard. If you haven't heard it from us, I can assure you, we are not what you expect. So take a look, and then decide for yourself.
and a straight razor if you get too close to me.
All right, guys, I'm back. I'm sorry. So this is a summary of a study that was just done on cult manipulation. And I think if we go through this, then it kind of like wraps up everything that we've sort of talked about today. So the first definitions of cult are based on spiritualism, an ideology that originated in the United States in 1848, which is interesting to know, isn't it? Because I didn't know that. When I'm done with the stream, I'll post all the articles, Jens. I don't like posting them before because I'll post it after. Spiritualists believe in the proven survival of one's mind after physical death, and that communication with the spirits of the dead can be achieved through various means. This ideology is closely related to a lot of religions, which is why the earliest cults probably stem from major religions such as Christianity, and since they are sub-branches that are usually small in size, are believed to be the most ephemeral of all types of religious structure. However, cults are no longer limited to major religions as society progresses. Instead, they become a more general concept that describes groups showing fervent passion towards a particular person, object, or ideology, willing to dedicate themselves to the cause that the leaders are building. Cult is not a concept slowly going into extinction, unlike assumed by most people. Instead, cultic groups could be disguised as institutions in daily life, restaurants, business training workshops, self-help groups, psychotherapy clinics, and much more. As could be deduced from its mode of operation, cult leaders implement all means of administration to ensure that members stay under control. Though not 100% successful in their recruitment processes, cultic group leaders are intelligent in using a series of persuasion techniques to build an image that attracts individuals to follow and therefore advance the leader's goals. Mechanisms of cult control are almost entirely based on the leaders and how they utilize their abilities and resources to manipulate the members of their cults. The common personality feature that all cult leaders seem to share is charisma. Oftentimes, like I said, I watch some of these cult leaders and I don't see it, but I guess it's in the eye of the beholder, right? While being a special quality of leadership, charisma is much more than that, as it consists of factors in the environment and the leader's belief in his or her destiny to lead the followers' faith in this, which makes up a connection between the leader and their followers. Through their charismatic leadership, cult leaders can implement large-scale hypnosis over members and control them to obey whatever order that the leaders give. And oftentimes when I was covering Ekankar, people would come into the chat and they'd be like, Jesus, this Harold Klemp guy, it's almost like he's using hypnosis on us. Yeah, he is. That's exactly what he's doing. This paper aims to explore the mechanism behind cult leaders' manipulation of individuals. It will generalize cult behaviors into a set of mechanisms that leaders usually implement to reach their goals through the exploitation of their followers. The results of this research will be of use to future studies on cult manipulation by providing a general outline of the behaviors of cult leaders and serving as a reference. The methodology. This paper adopts an analytical approach where relevant literature on the topic and specific significant cases are reviewed to reach an extensive conclusion. The database used for this study includes Google Scholars, JSTOR. Studies were generally filtered through the keywords cult manipulation and cult psychology. The results were then shortlisted again based on the year of publication, relevance to the topic, and their abstracts. That's like how I do my research. Information from the paper is closely analyzed with questions such as, how can this specific behavior be generalized to the universal mechanism shared between all cult-like groups, and what impacts does this mean of control have? In general, a cult can be defined as a group with tendencies to devote fervently to some person or idea. The ideologies, the movements, whose ideologies are usually spread through forcing psychological dependency in exploiting individuals involved in the cult, and most likely results in devastating harm to members, their families, and the whole community. It is known to the public that cult groups implement control on members and guide them into fulfilling the leader's objectives or even committing crimes. However, the structure and methods behind cult manipulation have not been discussed enough to become information that is common to most people in order to serve as a means of protection. But that's kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of this, where I said, I even went to the library, and even the librarian was like, yeah, I know, it's hard to find information on this. And it was like, isn't that weird? We have more information about this out here. I feel like maybe the government is trying to stop us all from learning. I'm just saying. The following literature review aims to integrate past research results in specific cases to conclude a set of basic ways that cult leaders use to establish control. Based on the above, the following research question is developed to navigate the direction of the research. How do cult leaders effectively implement control on individuals? Overview of manipulation. Though not all individuals whom cults have approached end up joining the cult, the people that do end up joining and staying for an amount of time significant enough to pose a problem for society can be dramatically affected by their experiences associated with cults, and the control mechanisms behind the significant influences can be superficially divided into two categories that are closely intertwined and often used together in most cases: physical and psychological. So, physical control. Physical controls, as implied by its names, are ways that manipulate individuals' physical bodies more than their brains, as the two are inseparable if leaders intend for complete domination to reach the intended effects. In Singer's 2003 book, they compared physical manipulation with businessmen promoting their products to customers. The most important aspect of a product that would lead to its success is its capability to bring a change to users, and cult leaders' job, like sellers, is to convince the individuals, the customers, that the product, in this case the person, object, or ideology that the cult follows, is indeed causing a positive change in them, even if it's not. Therefore, cult leaders need to come up with evidence. Generally, they combine two methods together to create evidence. Firstly, by putting members into designated circumstances and inducing predictable responses, cult leaders can interpret these responses in desirable ways that benefit them. Former cult members chanting tongues and feeling dizzy could be effect of hyperventilation, but leaders interpret it as effect of the cult's ideologies. Like when they do those faith healing presentations, right? And secondly, through the imposition of pressure and manipulation on members, cult leaders most likely would receive responses that they can use to further members' dependence on the cult in multiple aspects, like putting members on unhealthy vegetarian diets, which they also did in NXIVM. The process of luring members deeper into the cult starts simple and inexpensive. It is important to be aware that joining cults usually involves a rudimental payment and seemingly harmless procedures that old members of the cult practice, most likely pushed by the leader. Then the newly joined individuals were offered to participate in more intense and high-priced courses, which the cultic groups usually refers to as intensives. Oftentimes, that's literally what they're called, intensives. Saw that in Nexium as well. And are meant to help participants reach their goal of perfection or some achievement faster. It's kind of like Power Hour in MLMs, but on crack, and not just an hour. Activities that these groups use to stimulate the psychological sensations of members may include merely gathering around on the ground of a darkened room and repeatedly chanting phrases such as fear or out Satan out. Out Satan out. These sort of activities would create a stimulus to the brain and biology, cause the physical body to quiver or feel excitement, especially if you're doing it as a group, right? Then the leaders would turn on the light, wait for people to calm down, and tell them, see, it has an effect. Similar effects could also have been achieved through changes in physical activities, sleep, diet, living habits, relaxation, or increased stress. Referring to the two general techniques in the previous paragraph, these physical experiences could trick individuals into thinking that the group or activity that they have participated in has the power to change their lives to help them become who they wish to be. And we see this in On Passive in the webinars that they do. You know? Jay and Mr. Ash Mufareh, sir. It's just like, it's the same thing when they go to their heroes webinar. And they all spend 3 hours talking about how amazing Ash is and how this will change their lives. Several of them cry, you know, and then at the end of the meeting, they go, oh my God, that felt so good. This thing's really changing us. We're really bonding and coming together as a group. But really, it's all just fake, you know? It's all fake euphoria that they're feeling. In the beginning, even if some of them within the group notice the loopholes in the leader's logic or evidence, peer pressure coming from other newly joined or older members prevents suspicious individuals from speaking out. And they would eventually convince or even gaslight themselves into believing that the practices are truly helpful, beneficial, and has substantial effects to both their physical and mental health. Right? A case of physical control, Heaven's Gate. Don't worry, she left and then went back. Sorry, that's what I'm saying. Heaven's Gate was a religious group formed in 1974 with scholars classified as Christian, I'm not going to get this word, millenarianism, and ufology. They believed in the idea that the physical body for some people is merely a temporary container of the soul, which will eventually rise towards heaven and live on a UFO without concerns. The group was led by Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite, who met in 1972, went on a journey of spiritual discovery, and gained hundreds of followers by claiming to be witnesses of revelation, the story in the last book of the New Testaments. The group ended with the largest mass suicide in U.S. history because Jonestown was in Guyana. So even though it was a lot of U.S. people, it wasn't actually in U.S. history, with 39 victims. all found dead in a rented mansion in San Diego in 1997, with a few of them in other places, with the timing strangely close to the approach of Comet Hale-Bopp. Also, the last message updated on Heaven Gate's official website supports the group's fanatic belief in UFOs. What if I told you that somebody else is in there now updating that website today? Yeah. Nettles and Applewhite, or T and Doe as referred to in the group, were able to gain the trust of their followers because of their ability to reach out to people who had lost hope for society and religion, and to appeal to each of their personal needs. The group lived a lifestyle that resembled a monastery, according to Rio DeAngelo, a former Heaven's Gate member, and sought to transform themselves into beings that surpass nature and eventually ascend to heaven in the physical body that they possess. Christians who adopt monastic lifestyles are known to be isolated from society, eating simply and living a life wholeheartedly dedicated to their beliefs. However, social networking in the broader society has been proven to be a statistically significant predictor in determining an individual's mental health, which means that the lifestyle that the group adopted would have biologically affected the behavior and mode of thinking of members, let alone the insufficient protein intake from diets that would cause significant psychological effects that were most likely interpreted as a stage that was necessary for the soul to ascend. Just like how Ash was like, you have to get ready to make all the money. You know, like, what you gotta get ready to be accepted to something. A little scary. Ty's death changed the group's original belief. When Nettles died of cancer in 1985, followers started doubting the credibility of the ideology that Heaven's Gate was proposing, and even the credibility of T and Doe. Followers began to leave, with around 80 people remaining a few years after T's death. However, Applewhite twisted the original idea a little bit based on T's death and claimed that instead of ascending with the physical body that members own, the body would be left behind as they are only containers, and only the soul would be transported to heaven. This was more of a psychological twist and control than physical, but a cultic group can not only manipulate its members through one of the two, as they are closely intertwined and depend on each other strongly. Now we get into psychological control. Good old psychological control. Visualize money, and if you're really ready for it, it will come to you. Exactly. Exactly. Psychological control is the other main category of the manipulation enforced onto cult members, and they are usually means that are subtle and have gradual effects on an individual's identity and mode of thinking. However, after a certain amount of time, these manipulation techniques are enough even to change one's personality entirely. They are usually used with physical controls because it is impossible to implement complete control without either. This category would be broader than the previously discussed physical control, as there are numerous ways to mentally manipulate an individual even outside of a cult setting, as it has been a tool for people to reach their goals ever since the concept of the mind came into existence. These techniques are most likely driven by a sense of wanting to belong or to be fulfilled. The reason behind individuals' decisions to join cults may not be completely religious. An important reason that cults have been treated with nonchalance is the fact that the ideologies that are being preached are not mainstream and do not correspond with most of society, which is happening in a world where people are anxious to find a community that they belong to and fit in with most people. Therefore, the strong support of the unpopular ideologies that cults demonstrate could be the support that individuals who fail to fit in are looking for. Even more, cults are usually completely non-judgmental and welcoming to all when members first join, automatically pushing people looking for a deeper inside community. In addition, individuals that decide to join cults often lack something in life that they are stressing over, and cult leaders, as excellent sellers, use this almost fervent desire to grab their attention and lure them into joining the cult. Some prevailing examples of methods of psychological control will be discussed below to help outline the category. Hypnosis and trance. Hypnosis is defined as a changed state of awareness where relaxation is furthered to increase concentration. In a cult setting, cult leaders use hypnosis to plant ideologies that are beneficial to them into members' consciousness. At the same time, their minds are vulnerable, almost coercing hypnotized individuals to join into their scheme. It is the basis of almost all psychological manipulations, as it is the easiest to enter one's mind when it is vulnerable to relaxation. Again, think of groups of people getting together to do the Song of Hugh, and they all sit in a room together, and they all go into, I would argue, a hypnotic trance, and they go, and that Song of Hugh is supposed to bring them closer to God. That is why that I say Ekankar is a cult. You know? I'm just saying, it's scary. A trance is essentially a state of mind where the individual has no conscious control over their thoughts and behaviors, deep hypnosis, but can see, hear, sense, and respond to commands. Its use in cult settings is self-explanatory, as individuals in a trance are easy to manipulate and control. Entering a trance can be pleasurable to most people due to the absence of mind, reflection, and thinking, which makes the whole process almost appealing. The other one is guided imagery. Guided imagery is the process of not thinking but only picturing while listening to a story that cult leaders usually tell in a repetitive or rhythmic manner. It stems from hypnosis and has the potential to make individuals feel relaxed and absorbed into the world that the storyteller is constructing. Storytelling effectively reduces one's awareness of reality and in turn becomes more focused on other senses, such as audition or imagination. Some leaders incorporate body movements and other rhythmic sounds into the storytelling process to enhance emotional experiences and guide members towards the leader's intended effects. A case study of psychological control. Jenny. Cult pseudo-personality. Jenny got involved in a Christian community at the age of 25 because she did not like the ideologies of her local church and found this new community's approaches interesting. Before this, she struggled a lot to be in a long-term, stable relationship, which she ultimately blamed on herself. The community leaders seemed to consider her rather special, which gave her a lot of confidence and paved way for her further involvement in the cult. She then became more devoted to the cult as time passed and abandoned everything that she had. At the beginning, Jenny would question some of the things that the community assigned her, but it only resulted in coldness and beating. After a certain amount of time of being treated terribly due to her incorrect ideas and actions, she changed her name to Magdalene and suppressed her original personality to become a new person who is completely devoted to the God that the cult believed in. Magdalene was born so I could become the person they expected me to be, hating my parents, rejecting all outside the community, and doing things I would never have done before. I was a stranger to myself, Jenny said after she left the group. After the cult disbanded, Jenny, the personality, resurfaced. But she started experiencing serious post-trauma symptoms where she couldn't live without physically being in a church, but psychologically couldn't bear to be part of a church. This disorder is referred to as pseudo-personality. And in this case, with the word cult before the name to explain the context. Usually, individuals affected by this disorder demonstrate an entire change to their personality, to one that is more compatible with the environment that they are within in order to cope with the ideologies that their original self cannot accept. In Jenkinson's article exploring this case, she discusses both changes in self, defined as the moment-by-moment contact one has with self, others, and the environment, which makes it vulnerable to external stimuli, such as the ones exhibited in this case, and in personality, which is relatively more enduring and predictable and can answer questions such as, who are you? What are you like? Or how do you do things? In this specific case, Jenny demonstrated changes in both, which is typical of cult members, according to M.T. Singer. This drastic change in personality is what the author refers to as cult pseudo-identity, and it takes place as the strength of the common goal in a cult overcomes the differences between cult members. The personality is not real and internal. Rather, it overlays the person's real personality, since the cult denies the real one, urging the pseudo to replace it. Lifton's 8 components of thought reform are useful in explaining why the transformation in identity happens. Instead of classifying the cult pseudo-personality under one pre-existing psychological disorder as its symptom, Jenkinson argued that none of the previously raised concepts were the true reason behind the formation of Jenny's pseudo-personality. She raised the analogy of the machine, where she describes the cult as a machine that keeps on enforcing its culture and beliefs in Jenny, while she welcomes it until she gets completely buried. Jenkinson also brought up introjection, which can be defined as the response of one's mental or physical body after taking in a system of behaviors but did not completely absorb it into one's own genuine self yet. An analogy would be food. It can either be digested or not. If it's in the second case, you would either have to throw it up or painfully digest it, just like cult ideologies. Cult members often only realize the true visions of cults long after they join. The community may seem welcoming and even beneficial to them in the beginning, as they have no information about what the cult is truly like. In general, the research was a successful piece of work that can provide a guideline for future studies while retaining a personal stance from time to time. A literature search is limited to only several platforms and could not possibly represent the entire field's work on this topic, which is something to improve on. In addition, if resources allow, the categories would be further narrowed down to subgroups, which would help make a clear distinction between the two broad groups discussed in the paper. In conclusion, cults are groups that are religiously active in a less mainstream way and are usually operated through the manipulation of members, most of the time to achieve the leader's goals, who use different mechanisms to manipulate individuals. The manipulation techniques can be broadly divided into 2 categories, physical and psychological. Physical control, as can be inferred from its name, refers to control mechanisms that are enforced on individuals' physical bodies, including diets, physical punishments, and activities that can change hormone excretion. Psychological control, on the other hand, is the more commonly known type of control that is imposed mentally with techniques including hypnosis and guided imagery. They are used by cult leaders to get into members' brains and plant ideologies in their subconsciousness. These two methods are inseparable in terms of utilization, as they are based on one another and cannot be implemented without the other. Therefore, in most cult settings, the two are seen to be used together at the same time. In addition, each category is enhanced with a case study that demonstrates the impacts each type of manipulation could have on individuals. This connects the techniques directly with effects, demonstrating a clear relationship between mental manipulation methods, the mechanisms behind them, and the symptoms that affected patients may manifest, creating a dynamic connection that previous works failed to showcase. Furthermore, this paper could be used as a guideline for future research related to this topic, as it is a summarization of essentially all information and knowledge of cult control, referencing works from not just scholars specifying in the study of cultic groups, but also psychological specialists. This makes this source a credible source if one is looking for something that offers a clearly organized and reliable conclusion. However, instead of being a literature review that merely summarizes the points professionals have made previously, this research offers a lot of personal insights into the topic and even challenges some established claims about cult manipulation, which contributes to the scholarly discussion on this topic globally. The research was generally successful in achieving its initial purpose, and its publication could be a contribution to this heated discussion of cults worldwide. So they broke it up into two different groups of physical and psychological. Then there's the 8 points of mind control, which we've gone through. And then, of course, there's the bite model and the continuum and STEM, all that good stuff. If you get a general understanding, a decent understanding of all of these things, then I would say that you have a decent understanding of what it is that cults use to control its members. And that's really all I'm trying to do here. I'm not coming out here pretending to be some kind of expert. Okay, that's not what I'm doing. My whole thing with my channel is that I had just left a line of cults, and I wanted to go on the journey publicly to show you what it would be like to leave, how you go through researching after you've left, what information you find out, and then also to spread awareness and education as much as I can about these cults and their manipulation and mind control. We're going to continue to do that. And I even have some videos coming out soon that are going to be talking about some old school scams that will be interesting, as well as, because Swindler's coming out soon, I promise, as well as I have several deep dives on some cults that will be coming out over the next few months, this fall year, that I hope will also help you guys kind of understand all of this stuff that we keep talking about, because it's a constant thing that you have to continually educate yourself about, and you can never ever know too much. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it. That's about all I got for you guys today. Shout out to all my troopers that managed to somehow make it through all like 4 hours of this. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. I realize that these are not my favorite streams, but I mean, it's one thing to show you guys some cults I'm covering and we can laugh and point and blah, blah, blah. But I would be doing you all a very big disservice if we didn't also look at the studies, didn't look at the bite model over and over again and discuss it, didn't look at STEM, and didn't really research any more into the mind control and these manipulation tactics. You know what I mean? I feel like that's all stuff that we need to also do as much as possible, as well as speak out about the cults that we're covering. And I do have to say, I did again just read Scarred, and in reading it, the whole way that they talked about how Nexium formed was just so familiar to how other groups I've been in have formed, and it reminded me of On Passive a lot, especially when they talked about how how Keith didn't seem like somebody that a lot of people would look up to. A lot of people, when they met Keith, they found him kind of creepy. They're like, this guy's kind of weird. I don't know why everyone looks up to him and calls him Vanguard and celebrates his birthday for a whole week, but I guess if this works. And I feel like that's how some people might even feel about On Passive and Ash Mufareh, right? But it's like, it doesn't matter what we think or feel about these people. It matters how they see these people and how they were manipulated into this thing. And I hope that we can all get a better understanding of that. And maybe in doing that, maybe some of the people that are in these cults will listen or hear something that will give them a aha moment, as we call it in therapy. Make them go, aha, and make a realization that they are in a cult and that they need to leave. Tomorrow it is Friday. I will be putting on a Friday stream, so make sure that you come and hang out with me tomorrow. It will probably also be in the afternoon, so look for it on the community tab. There's lots of fun stuff coming out in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned, as always, to the community tab and my social medias. I love all of you. Have a fabulous, fabulous, amazing rest of your day, and I'll see y'all tomorrow for Friday. Mwah! Bye!
Queen of Karma, spitting fire like a dragon, torture scams, ain't no lagging. Expose the villains, no chillin', she real, stay killin'. Manipulation tactics, break it down like fractions. Watch your videos, gain traction, mind in action. Sub to her channel, truth candle burning bright, illuminating dark corners, bringing scams to light. Queen of Karma, grinding day and night, unveil the schemes, make the world right. My mentality, she dissecting the madness, all some realness. Teach you how to stop the fakes, dodging all the ill stress. Her words piercing like arrows, no shadows. Follow her lead, avoid the gallows. Stay woke, folks, don't get caught in the hype. Queen of Karma got that insight, clear sight. Deflect the con, scam alarms, ringing sheep fight. Wisdom flowing, unmasking the night. Karma queen, reign supreme, scammers nightmare, that's her theme. She got the strategy, breaking down your fantasies. Every tactic she witnessed, break free from the sickness. Channel wisdom, slickness, ain't no hit or miss. Sub to her channel, truth candle burning bright, illuminating dark corners, bringing scams to light. Queen of Karma, grinding day and night, unveil the schemes, make the world right.